Good afternoon and welcome to the Electoral Area Services Committee for Tuesday, February 6, 2024. I guess there's not much in the gallery, so I don't need to go through the particulars about where the washrooms are and where the mustering points are. So we'll continue along. First item of business is always the recognition of the traditional territories and the fact that we are doing our business today on the unceded traditional territory of Comox First Nation. This is a meeting absolutely dedicated to budget. We have some weigh-in already from the CVRD public. And I'm going to turn it over to James Warren, our CAO, to give a summary of the input we received to date.
Thanks. And I'm actually going to turn the microphone straight over to Lucy Wacharek, our Chief Financial Officer, to provide that summary of the input from the public received on the financial planning. Lucy.
Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you, through the chair. From a public input perspective, we have no further public input than that reported on yesterday. So it's still just the two pieces of feedback that are out on our Engage site. And that's all I have for that.
Well, that was easy. Okay, so without any further ado, number two, Community Works Funds. We have a report dated February the 1st regarding a Community Work Fund status update for the period ending December 31st, 2023. A motion to receive. Move a second on receipt. Over to CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I'm going to turn this over to Lucy Wacharek to introduce this Community Works Fund status report. And then probably move straight into the allocations from the Community Works Fund Grant Fund report as well. So Lucy, if you want to report on the status report first.
To the chair, to the CEO, to the chair. These two reports go together, they support each other. So if there's questions after I stop after the first one, which will be really brief from the status report perspective, we can go right into the next one and address questions overall. And also just one quick point from the overall financial planning process that we're using. The only thing that I just wanted to say that if we needed to do any other further follow-up coming out of today's or tomorrow's meeting, then we do have the meeting on the 26th, the Monday, that we can bring things back specifically to this table. Okay. So I'll move on to the first report, which is the Community Works Fund status report as of December 31st. With Community Works Funds being an important revenue source for budgets, staff reviewed the current practice that we've used for this, along with our other processes that we have for budget as well. We have shifted to have this committee consider the fund prior to and along with all of your individual services. Therefore, we have two reports here for you. The first one being the status report, which takes your activity up to December 31st, and in essence, the total of that, our current 10-year contract. The overall balance left that's unallocated is about $275,000. Funds for Area A are overdrawn by $82,000. However, this is not an issue for this particular funding. We have noted that an error occurred in the previous reporting that we did where one of the allocations was missed. So along with the typical schedule in Appendix A, we did attach 10-year historical information by project types and electoral area. And this information supports the budget process, and also supports the next report. And I can take any questions at this point, or if you want me to go to the next report, I can do that.
Well, I think Director Arbor has a question right now. Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. And I think for the 82,000 down, you meant for Area B, not Area A.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's thank you for adding that historical data, because we are closing out Community Works Funds, and obviously there's a little bit of not a ton, but there's a little bit of uncertainty heading into the next fiscal and 10-year agreement, and we still don't have indication as to whether it will be doubled or probably it will be the same as we've been.
Okay.
what I was gonna say is, in terms of the unallocated funds that are remaining, how does that get reconciled with the closing of the agreement? So Director Grieve, you still have about 350,000 in unallocated funds. And so what is the Government of Canada's expectations around unallocated funds?
Yeah, through the chair. Typically, what I've seen with the gas tax funds, they can flow into one contract to another. So at every year end, we are required to do statements of expenditures, which then just brings forward balances, and you're reporting on your next bucket of expenditures that have gone through, and it's always keeping track of that. So I think it'll be fine. If there's anything different than what I'm saying, the next time we come to this table, we'll clarify that, but we're not seeing an issue going from one contract to the other, which is in fact what happened 10 years ago as well.
So thank you. So that means I went a little overboard by making sure in my areas that I have $250 left in the Hornby Denman and
Oh,
2,000 in
about
area. I was trying to close out everything by the end.
Yeah.
Which I'm happy with, but
Yeah, good.
it's good to have that information that there's no problem for the unallocated fund for Area C.
Mhm.
It's great. And Lucy, you got some more?
Yes, I can go on to the next report.
You can go on and on.
Okay, on and on. All right, so just to.
We have to vote on receipt of that
All
one.
right.
Where are we at? Okay, move a second on receipt already, so any opposed to receipt? That carries and on and on.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, we put this report at the beginning of your deliberation process so that the information can be considered prior to getting into those individual services. The report is for information only. Any resolution for use of the Community Works Funds will be expressed with the individual service presentations, okay? Within the 2024-28 budget, there is 9.7 million currently layered into that budget. That's Community Works Funds. So that's all of the pieces that aren't yet spent in there. Some of that may be carry forward, some of it for projects that are scheduled out into the future years. So these dollars, of course, are making quite the difference across many services. We do fully expect the federal government will continue with funding, and likely we will receive news and or a contract going into next month. And from an assumption perspective to future planning periods, we wouldn't assume that we're going to get any more than what we currently get on an annual basis. We do feel that that's a pretty safe assumption, and hopefully it'll be something that's more than that. As we finalize proposed budgets and considered sustainability of services, further use of Community Works Funds was considered. We looked to near-term programs, projects, and places where the pressures on tax requisitions could be reduced. The list of additional proposed allocations is short, and it's related to two services, King Coho and Parks and Greenways. So when Derry and Mark present their services, a full account of why Community Works Fund allocations are being recommended, they'll provide that at that time. But basically, we have a small sewage system facing significant increases in a needed upgrade. And secondly, for the park services, these Community Works funds when used for our smaller projects will significantly help with building up reserves so that we can afford those larger advancements or increases to that service. So we also left a note in the report for directors to reconsider the funding level for project 1139 Shingle Spit boat launch. And this project is currently funded with 150,000 in short-term debt, and covering the cost with grant will alleviate the need to collect taxes for debt servicing in this area. And lastly, whether it was for the use of Community Works or Growing Communities funds, Finance has identified the struggling recreation complexes is having with funding asset renewal. Such projects are typically a good place for Community Works funding. However, we do understand that this is not a service solely within the electoral areas. I do have a note in the report which does make a suggestion to flow conversations about equally contributing Community Works funds across all partners for such projects. And I did want to add one subsequent piece of information for directors to consider. Last Friday, Finance did host the municipal CFOs, and we did discuss this topic. The CFOs all indicated that the use of their community works funds is directed to their infrastructure, and this is not unusual. It's the historical use of the gas tax money, and multiple municipalities in essence commit to putting that back into a renewal of their infrastructures like roadways or their underground. Their preference, the preference of the municipal CFOs is to raise tax dollars to cover the needs for recreation complexes. So this is the way they're seeing it. And this involves if it involves the use of short-term debt, that would be fine, and that would be their preference. So the dollars that they've allocated out for community works grant funding works to help take down taxes in their own communities by as applied to use for their infrastructure. And they're saying, well, if this being those regional services, and if we have to raise taxes here across the board in order to facilitate that, they're saying that's what makes most sense to them. So this concludes the comments that I have, and for sure can address any questions. We can talk further about these pieces as we get to the individual services as well.
Well, we have questions already, Director Harbour.
So, and thanks for those comments about the municipal approach on this. So I just want to make sure that table 2 in the report on page 4 shows the recreation proposed CWF revenue, which I assume would be for the next cycle, for the next 10 years cycle, I guess, it would new allocations. I would prefer to start at 0 in those community works fund, because what I'm hearing is if the municipalities are not putting contribution of their CWF, and if the preference is to utilize short-term debt, as you say, we're gonna end up paying. And right now, I don't understand why staff propose that we pay for half of it. Community works fund is per capita, right? So we're about 1/3 of the valley's population. So I would expect at least to see 1/3. But even then, I would say, if everyone is not chipping in grant and they're putting it as debt, especially if it's debt to the service, right, which is what we saw with the turf field, then we'll pay twice. We'll give up our community works funds, which they're not, and then we'll pay a share of that debt. So for me, that's a non-starter. If they're putting 0 community works fund, I would say the area should
Yes.
put 0 community works fund as well. So I would eliminate table 2.
Sure.
And community works fund are, especially for us, like in rural areas, we are under such pressure with so many services. And it's also the flexible funds that we can assign to priority projects in the areas. I would have a different tune if the municipalities were actually throwing their community works funds at it as well. Thanks.
Very welcome.
Maybe I'll just weigh in really quickly. Certainly the column there does say proposed, but I think the table 2 there is as a conceptual kind of concept. I appreciate your comments, Director Harbour. As noted, there's no recommendation in this particular staff report, because you'll see in the individual budgets, that's where we are actually laying in the community works funds, and it is not in function 645. It's not part of the recreation complexes service at this point. I think the intent here was just to draw to light that there is pressures in that service, and it is something for consideration. But as Lucy noted, the municipalities have their own interest, and certainly the EA directors have their own interests and priorities too.
And again,
Thanks, Chair. And based on the comment, yeah, appreciate that. And that's something we can deal with when we get to the recreation budget. And I understand in April in the recreation service, we'll get the GHG projects estimates. So I don't know what my fellow directors did on the artificial turf, but it's interesting that we keep seeing all these cost pressures in the service, but we're pursuing the new and the brightest rather than addressing current needs within that service, which I've expressed as a concern. So yeah, I understand floating the idea of table 2, but I would stay focused on table 1. And on that one, is this proposed for the new cycle, or this is proposed for spending the remainder?
So if I can, I'll clarify, because I always haven't been as clear as I should be in the report. So for sure, I'll just say, I'll just iterate again for table 2.
Yeah.
And 645 capital projects. In your current proposed capital budget, there is no layered
Yeah.
community works funding in there. So as we get to those, you'll see that we have started to apply a little bit of short-term debt. So that is not in there at all. And then for these projects that are here in table 1, so for the projects that are for service 621, because there was difficulty in funding them, they are currently structured in your proposed budget with unapproved community works funds. So if it's not the wish of this committee to actually move forward with those, then we will fund those via different means for that particular service. And for 331 for King Coho, there is no community works funds in there. It's currently funded with reserve and debt. And the request is, do we apply some community works funds in here to alleviate some of the debt? Okay, so from the perspective of which contract are we suggesting that it come from? What we're saying is let's use community works grant funding, and from which contract it won't matter. And the allocations, we typically historically we have figured out which portion of these funds go to each one of your areas. We will continue to do that as we go forward. But for now, if it makes sense to the committee that we use it to alleviate what's happening there for that capital project and that service, then we certainly have the capability and the room and that funding to do so.
Thank you for that explanation. So if I look at say the Union Bay Playground in table 1, so I'm out of money in my area, so I am supportive of the 175, assuming we get a renewal of
Yeah.
community works fund. So that's the indication you're looking for today. So yeah, so I do support that as a first allocation in the coming cycle. Yeah, so I guess for today that's good. Oh, so and maybe as an indication, since one community works, one of the things that I keep struggling with is obviously Graham Lake. And I know we'll talk about the Denman water service a little bit later on, but I am trying to think about if we get a 10-year renewal. If I could, I don't want to spend all the community works of fund, but I would be willing to contemplate like a 30 grand a year over 10 years to that service. So because it's still way too expensive and we weren't successful in getting regional funds or new grants. So I will be looking at community works to see if we could have an impact on that specific service through a 10-year horizon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And it does describe a way that I feel that your community works funds can help in your financial plans. And by indicating that up front when we build those funds, then we're eliminating overtaxing people as well. So, for sure. Yeah. And sorry, I didn't answer your question as well as I could. Your previous question. Yes, Union Bay, for example, that definitely would come out of the next round of our contract. Okay.
Director, do you have any questions? Okay, I have a community work funds for dummies question. If it isn't funded through gas tax anymore, so how do they fund it? Never was. It was just a saying. So is it just general revenue from the federal government that channels it through UBCM or FCM?
Through the chair, I think Director Arbor knows that better than I can. I have always understood that was gas tax money that they're spreading across Canada. Which bucket it actually comes from, I don't know. General revenue.
Something we don't know anything about here at local government. Okay, great. So I guess we're on the receipt of item, the second half of item 2. So any opposed? That carries. Moving along to the water supply core service. Financial plan. We have Mark Rutten here to present. I'll turn it over to CAO for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, Mark Rutten, General Manager of Engineering, will present this overview. You'll see that the agenda is broken out by core service. And so the first one we will jump into is the water supply core service. Mark will provide an update, or not even an update, an overview from yesterday's presentation of the board table. And then we'll move into the individual services.
Thank you, James. Through the CEO and through the chair, this will be a very brief update. You were all present at the core service update yesterday for water, so I'm not going to repeat any of that as it's probably pretty fresh still. As you know, water services and water supply and treatment is one of the most important services for the CBRD. It spans the entire regional district from north to south. And Chris and his team are here to present 4 distinct water service budgets, and then also the Sandwich budget, highlighting the challenges, the opportunities, the initiatives, and of course, the costs, which is a big part of the budget presentation. And I'm happy to turn it over to Chris.
Chris LaRose will be joined by Mike Hirschmiller and presenting on this range of budgets, starting with the Comox Valley Water Local Service Area.
Little tag team for you.
Over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, James. And through the chair, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so working closely with finance, Mike and I have prepared a presentation to walk you through the proposed financial plan for the Comox Valley Water Local Service Area. As this is the first of 5 presentations in a row, Mike and I plan to present this one in its entirety, and then skip over repeated slides for the subsequent presentations, just to save some time. We're aware that this is going to be a lot of water information to absorb in one afternoon. Yeah, so as our manager of water services, Mike leads a crew of 17 water distribution and water treatment operators that manage 6 CVRD owned and operated water systems. And they operate out of the still recently completed Comox Valley water treatment plant. So this particular service supplies water to approximately 2,000 properties. Oh, a second, let me just grab the clicker. Oh. Thank you. There we go. Yeah, so about 2,000 properties in the rural areas surrounding the core municipalities. And this service area is the result of an amalgamation of 5 smaller service areas that existed up until about 2018 when we amalgamated them. Some of those smaller service areas remained in existence after the amalgamation for the purpose of collecting parcel tax as part of the reserve balance equalization process. And only one of those remains. And so it is on the agenda today as a standalone item. It'll be a very quick one because it exists solely for the purpose of passing through some collected parcel tax revenue. So now over to Mike for an operational overview.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon. So the operational in 305 purchases this water, as Chris said, from the regional water system, and it is mainly a distribution system. So we really have most of the infrastructure on this system is all underground: water services, water mains, hydrants, valves, and whatnot. So in 2023, we did complete the rate review, comprehensive rate review, which drove the new recommended rates for the system. We've really been focusing this past year on City Works, and actually the next step of implementation. We've seen that City Works is going to be a thing that we're working on moving forward. We're always going to be updating our assets and updating our procedures. But this year we really focused on getting our preventative maintenance planning through it, with regards to mostly focusing on our hydrants, our valves, air valves. And what we found is that it's really starting to, as we're starting to understand it better, it's really starting to show its show its importance, show its value of getting those assets updated, getting it updated with GIS, so it's on our mapping, following up to various service requests and work orders, and really getting those preventative maintenance plans in place. We have also completed our in-house repaint fire hydrant labeling in 305, and now we're moving that to our other service areas this year and the next year. This was a great project. The guys started to, the operators started to build our own trailer with the infrastructure on it. It's a little wet blaster, and so we go around and basically have a couple operators working through the process of prepping the hydrant, and then someone coming through and painting the hydrant afterwards. And it's really showing well. As these slides show it. Some of the hydrants are looking a little old and weathered. The one that's all the same hydrant. Left is what it looked like. The right's after, or the middle is after the wet blasting, and then we're repainting them and labeling them all and getting all that asset information gets uploaded into CityWorks, and then we can see moving forward what maintenance has been done when and how long it took. And then also our pressure reducing valve chambers, where we've had some issues with water infiltrating in some of the chambers, and we're looking at possibly bringing these above ground as newer installed ones would be above ground, but very costly and they weren't at end of life yet, so didn't require that capital expense. So we're looking at putting some work into these PRV chambers this year to make them safer and also more efficient. Now, these ones, we had some really wet areas, high water table, and we injected. We basically were drilling holes into the chambers, injecting them with a like expanding concrete that will seal them off, and it's been really successful. So this year we're going to be looking at more going into and actually upgrading these chambers now that they're dry, and we can put heat in them, and that'll extend the life of the infrastructure in there. So moving quickly with the work plan for 2024. We're still, there's a few little things on Sandwick left to get done to actually decommission some of the old stuff, as well as we worked with the ministry this year as they were repaving the highway in that section to renew some services and renew some of the water main that went under the road there. As I stated, PRV chamber upgrades, that's a photo of a PRV chamber, pressure reducing valve chamber on the right. And now that once we get those things dry, as I said, it's a lot better, and it makes more sense to upgrade the parts and pieces inside of them now that they'll stay dry and last longer. A couple of water main connections, Salisbury looping, always rather a looped water system than one with dead ends. These are better for water quality and quantity, as well as Greaves Crescent. It's not so much an emergency connection, it's more of a new connection, because we have one connection on the water main, but when we did that big river crossing project, that repair a few years ago, we installed infrastructure that would allow us to move it so we could have two connections on either side of a valve. So we have more operational kind of flexibility with that community, as well as just continuing our process on asset management, planning and implementation of that. Trends, opportunities. This is one of the slides that's on all the presentations. So we'll just talk about it once and then answer questions moving forward if you have any. Really, we've noticed it's the cost increases are the biggest things this year, as well as some of WorkSafe regulation changes that have driven us to kind of think outside the box. We've always prided ourselves on being fiscally responsible with our management of the water system, but this year we had to. We just looked at a few other steps that just helped us save a little bit of money in spots where we could. The PRV, as I spoke to a little bit, we weren't going to bring them above ground. That cost wasn't necessary. So we're really upgrading the chambers. One of the things that we do in PRVs is screens that you have to get to maintain once a week. And we brought the infrastructure up to the manhole. And that actually, it was a move. It seemed very simple and straightforward. This was really driven by the operators. But our safety consultant, Ronnie put it forward to the British Columbia Municipal Safety Association, and we won the Innovation of the Year award. So we got out there and got a little trophy, and it was a nice little thing. The hydrant rehab, as I said, we did have some very high numbers when we went out to take a look at having a contractor do this painting for us, and we ended up, as I said, the operators really put this trailer together, and it costs about $8 plus, sorry, $8 in sand and paint and labels and stuff like that per hydrant. We bought a bunch of stuff in bulk, and it costs it's under $100 anyway per hydrant now to paint them, which is really cost effective considering what the other cost was looking at, in the hundreds of dollars per hydrant. as well as lock block bunkers. The city and town have, any public works department has had this for a long time, but we never did because we didn't have a spot for it. So now at the treatment plant, we've made a little works yard and we kind of have we've put some lock block bunkers in and storing our material, which is much more efficient to get to and from our job sites.
Great.
And that's,
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Great summary. Lots going on.
Just one question, how come we don't paint them gold like Crown Isle?
I don't have a witty answer.
Would that put the budget up too far?
All right, yeah, moving along. So some key strategic priorities that are overlap with our operations for this service. One complete last year, which was the water rate review. So we're shifting to implementation of those rates now, and keeping in mind the commitment to revisit or review the rate review every 4 years. So that'll be 2027, the next time we take a look at the rates. Lots to do between now and then. More on this, so that was a strategic priority. On the work plan side, we continued focus on asset management, on preventative maintenance. And then one last board priority there was the CEEP, the Corporate Energy and Emissions Program. We completed an energy audit of our key facilities, just ending late 23, first month of 24. We're shifting to feasibility studies of the opportunities that were identified in that process. So we'll be bringing those through the EASC at some point soon. So just a very quick summary of the HR here. So basically negligible change year over year, 23 to 24 and into 25. Just a note that that these are projections based on a 3-year rolling average, and that only actual time spent by our operators is billed to the service. So that translates to sometimes a bit of a difference between what was projected and what was actually realized every year, but it ensures that only actual time is billed to the service. And it is surprisingly consistent year over year, the level of effort that's attracted by each of these services, which is a little surprising. Expenses. There's been a general escalation to O&M costs, just reflecting one of the challenges that Mike identified there. Just everything is inflating. Although we do have one of the biggest changes year over year is a significant increase in the transfer to reserves, the fourth from the bottom line. And that's a direct result of the rate review that we implemented last year. That was the objective. And you'll see on a subsequent slide as we look out into the latter years of this 5-year plan that how much we're projecting to be able to put away is increasing significantly. And then there's the transfer to other functions there. Just wanted to point that out. That's the transfer to 300 for a proportional share of the water operations cost, which are starting this year will be tracked in a dedicated sub-function to function 300. To make it really easy and transparent to show all the costs that are shared between water services. On the revenue side, so parcel tax is up 25% as per the conclusions of the rate review. User rates increasing 9% in 24 and some more modest increases in the subsequent years. And the equalization rate parcel taxes that I mentioned at the beginning there are expiring for Greaves Crescent and England Road or did expire in 23. Hence just the remaining Sandwick, which we'll touch on in the next presentation. So that amount is starting to go down a little bit as those two parcel tax expired. This table will be familiar from the rate review consultation and review and approval process late last fall. So just highlighting the changes, the projected changes to user rates and parcel taxes over the 5-year plan. And then looking into the subsequent years of nothing much to highlight in terms of other operational expenses, but just drawing your line to the fourth from bottom, drawing your eyes to the fourth from bottom line there, the transfer to reserve. Showing a very significant escalation, which is providing some significant comfort when we look at the asset replacement schedule, which will be on a subsequent slide here, just the scale of the replacements that are facing this service. So getting into capital planning, just a slide here, just reiterating our ongoing kind of focus on asset management. We'll be working this year to update our asset inventory and develop a formal procedure for how it's updated as we progress and we replace assets. As we get new information collected through CityWorks and other means to update our condition assessments and update the risk and criticality assessments, continue the integration with the GIS and the implementation of our computerized maintenance management system, which is showing huge benefits after a significant time investment by Mike and his team over the last couple of years. And the last piece there, the development of a condition assessment program. So I reminded you of the commitment to undertake the rate review every 4 years. Well, prior to our next rate review, we're committed to having a condition assessment program in place, and that data available to help us better pinpoint the actual timing of replacements before we review the rates next time. Looking at the 24 to 28 capital plan, a number of main replacement programs on the plan, some of which are in 24 and some in 25. Some PRV chamber upgrades, some Sandwick decommissioning work. Just to note that we are kind of as part of our developing the internal capacity and processes to help us be able to handle the massive main replacement programs that are coming over the next 15 years. We are starting to look at efficiencies in delivery, and you can see here there's a number of these main replacement projects. So our plan is to bundle them, and deliver them with a single engineer and a single contractor. And we see that kind of being the likely model as we start to pick up in main replacement projects. We'll be, doing our condition assessments, developing prioritized lists of replacements, and then packaging them on an annual basis and to deliver them as efficiently as possible. And here, just a little refresher is the shape of the curve facing us. And if you can't see it, the peak of that curve is roughly 2036. And so that's the anticipated main replacements kind of spread out in roughly how we expect to be delivering them. And so you can picture, roughly speaking, every one of those bars being a separate annual package of main replacements that is packaged not just with 305 Comox Valley, but with every other water service as well to deliver these as efficiently as possible. And a couple slides here on reserves. So we have 2 reserves for this service: the future expenditure reserve and the facilities reserve fund. Future expenditures reserve, $25,000 to $20,000 contribution annually to help boost that the value of that reserve over these 5 years. And then the bulk of the asset management funding will be coming out of the facilities reserve. So this is where you see the very significant increase in contributions over the 5-year plan, and a corresponding increase in the reserve balance, despite the withdrawals coming out for those main replacement projects in 24, 25, and 26. So in summary, our activities and service delivery for this water system runs crosses the gamut for the board strategic priorities. Our efforts on asset management and establishing fair and equitable rate structure falls squarely in the fiscal responsibility. We are a fully metered water system with a conservation rate structure to help minimize our environmental footprint on the watershed and river systems. And we work in close collaboration with Comox First Nation on any project that overlaps with area of interest. And given the significance that the Comox community places on water, many of our projects do overlap with their interests, particularly those projects that fall within the area covered by the cultural heritage policy. That's all from us today, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, directors? Director Hardy?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. Just a quick question with regards to the Lloyd Road. And where the water main is it the top of the hill or the bottom of the hill?
It's the bottom, so the Lloyd Road water main cuts across Kin Beach Park over to Lloyd Road.
Okay, so it's not going down the hill itself, then that infrastructure. It's going across in Ken Beach Park, the campground.
Yeah, it doesn't go along the top of, I can't remember what that road is, Kilmarnock maybe, but it goes along through the park and then it does go up Lloyd Road to the top end of Lloyd Road.
Thanks.
Director? Another one? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So when there's the mains being replaced, is there going to be any work that's undertaken on the roads? They're on Lloyd Road there. Like I know there's a number of constituents that have expressed concerns about improvements need to be undertaken there. Sort of, I think those were some of the questions that I've fielded over the last few weeks, as well as whether that replacement work will involve some of the road work that needs to be kind of fixed up down there.
Yeah, we look at when we do our water mains, most of our water mains are actually, because the roads aren't owned by us, they're the ministry roads there. Our infrastructure is generally in the shoulder. So of course, when we do crossings, then we will upgrade, that section, but the roads themselves are part of the ministry's upgrade plan, and they do have a list that they have as, critical and also condition. So they do look at doing that, but if ever we are near the road or in the road, we do repave to their standards. So yeah, but as far as that one, I know the majority of that water main is in the shoulder, so it won't impact the road.
Director Robert?
Yeah, thanks. Just two things. One is I'm sure all of us would like to pass on the congratulations on the Innovation Award. Was it Kenny you said, or somebody like that, or somebody else? Anyways, it doesn't matter. Whomever was behind it.
It was the whole crew,
pass-
really. It was
The
our
whole
service
pass
crew,
on
yeah.
the congratulations. That's pretty neat. And just a question, because I know we're on budget, but just topically interested. When you talk about the integration of GIS, is there a link to the IMAP system, or it's a independent system? It is with IMAP as well, so we are truly integrating across all services here.
Yeah, so our computer maintenance management system is a layer. It's a layer on GIS, and all of our data is kept within the GIS system. So we want to put our confined spaces as a layer that it all goes into the same database. And so it's accessible through, iPads in the field, and they can really now begin to access everything, including details and as-built and confined space hazard assessments and permits. And it's really, everything's in one, and it's all kept in GIS.
That's awesome. I'm really happy that IMAP and the rest of their, has support across all the organization to centralize those services. Over time, it's going to make it really easy for anyone to really access information. So as James and I are fellow geographers that went through GIS training, so it's good to see the the good work being done there.
Well, I think that the CVRD building trophy case should be displaying it proudly along with our women's basketball team trophy and of course the director's soccer team trophy that's coming up. My question is around, you talk about Arden Road, 600K upgrading Arden Road. So one side of Arden Road is Courtney. The other side of Arden Road is Area C or Area A, depending what side you're on of the Cumberland Road. So how do they do that? How do you figure out you're not putting two water mains down, obviously?
Yeah, this area, as you've highlighted, is notorious for gray area between the jurisdictions. So we've just initiated our water master planning process for the core service 300. And one of the key tasks there is to really dig in and look at these areas such as Arden, such as Lerwick, and others where there's a lot of uncertainty about ownership and responsibility. And figure out a way to, what our end goal is. So that's one piece. So that's yet to come, and that will be close collaboration with the city and the town. And then the other piece is the Water South Extension project. So that'll be running along that section. So we do anticipate that will be delivered, that funding will go towards like that work will be, the outcome of the water master planning work will be packaged in with the Water South Extension project. And we'll deliver that replacement, whatever it's determined to be, through the Water South Extension project.
Well, it makes sense. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, so we're on the recommendation now that the proposed 2024-2028 financial plan for function 305, the Comox Valley Water Local Service Area, be approved. We can have that motion moved. And seconded. Any discussion? Anybody opposed? It carries unanimously. Now on to Sandwick.
Great, okay. Through the chair. So yeah, a very, very brief presentation here. So as I mentioned at the previous presentation, Sandwick is the last remaining water service that's in place solely for the purpose of collecting a parcel tax for the reserve balance equalization that happened when we amalgamated these services. So the total annual collected by the service is just over $85,000, and then that is passed over to function 305 to help offset kind of a lower than average reserve per property when we converted. So Sandwick's reserve balance per property worked out to significantly less than the average at the time. So the parcel tax was implemented, and it's a fairly significant one. So 85K per year collected and passed on, and that will go through to 2028 when it's expected to end. After that, the service will be retired. That's all we have to say on this one. Is there any questions about that process? No.
Seems to be good. So this is the last of the local service areas we have to bring up to speed. England's and Mars and all the rest are all retired.
Yeah, that's right. So of the 5, I think 2 were above the average. So they actually had a deferred parcel tax for a couple of years. 2 had a fairly modest amount, and they were retired last year. And then 1, Sandwick, was a little bit more significant. So they're going through we spread it out over a longer time frame just to make it a little easier for the residents to handle. But that will show up as a step down in their water related costs in 2029. It's currently projected.
Good job. I remember when we first proposed that and it sounded so radical. Here we are, we're at the end of the line. That's great. Okay, so we have a recommendation that proposed 2024-2028 financial plan for function 306, the Sandwick Water Service, be approved. I can have the motion moved. Seconded. Okay, and any discussion? Anybody opposed? That also carries unanimously. Demond Island Water Local Service Area Function 307 and Graham Lake number 310. Move a second on receipt and over to staff again.
Okay, great. Thank you through the chair to members of the committee. So as you can see on the title slide, we've chosen to combine 307 and 310 together into a single presentation, just because these services are, for all intents and purposes, operated as a single service. There are plans in the future to work towards amalgamation, but only once we've resolved the water quality issues that are and likely constructed the water treatment plant. As you can see on the map there, purple on the top is the Graham Lake system, which was converted to a regional service at the beginning of 2023. And then pale blue at the bottom right was the pre-existing Demond Island Water Local Service Area. This is a bit of an old map. It still shows those properties between the two in orange. previously identified or referred to as the glide extension properties, but really they should be unhighlighted because there's 2 or 3 of them have joined the system and the others have signaled they're not interested. So that's the lay of the land. There's 66 properties in Graham Lake and roughly 23 on Devon Island. Yeah, so I'll do the kind of accomplishments, the highlights for this service, as it's been largely managed. A lot of these items are kind of more on the engineering side. So yeah, conversion occurred at the beginning of last year. There was pre-existing funding for the water treatment project, which we were able to secure an extension for the deadline through to 2028 to give us some breathing room, allow us time to do the due diligence on this one. We did make some progress on the water treatment project, big one being communication, well, due diligence to help us understand exactly what the requirements are for the service, and then consultation with the community and with the EASC. We undertook a hydrological assessment of Graham Lake to just make sure that we understand the water availability before we commit a bunch of money, the community's money, to this big project. And then we undertook a dam safety inspection of this dam as well as Langley Lake, kind of through the same contract. Looking ahead to this coming year, we are focused right now on delivering interim treatment plant upgrades to help reduce the operational effort and risk associated with this service. And we foresee that this will have a pretty fundamental reduction in the level of effort and kind of the number of times per week that operators are required at that system, which is going to be a big help because it'll be 2 or 3 years until we have that newly upgraded treatment plant in place. We are, and we'll have an update report coming forward fairly soon on this project with a lot more detail for the committee. We do have an unresolved issue with the supply main that kind of popped up last summer, which we were able to work through with the help of the local fire department, but we do expect it to recur again this year when the consumption increases. And we're definitely looking to progress the water treatment project significantly this year. Again, update coming soon. So I'll just skip over these ones. They're similar to the other water service areas. On the HR side, no significant change here. We continue to work with the support of contract operators on Demon, so they don't show up on the HR side, but rather on the expenses, operational expenses. Which brings us to the summary slide here. Year-over-year reduction, largely from a reduction in the amount of chemicals being consumed at this system, chemicals and supplies, and a reduction in professional fees just from the anticipated kind of conversion from an operational project to a capital one. So these are showing up on the capital side. A modest increase in transfer to reserves. Nothing else to highlight there. On the revenue side, we have been kind of partway along the scheduled rate increases for the service to bring the rates up to where they need to be to help fund the borrowing required for the treatment project. And so that's reflected for, so yeah, we continue to charge the same rates for 307 and 310. We followed a very similar process for undertaking the rate review using the same Waterworth software tool as we did for the other water services. And really looking out the latter 4 years of this plan, it gets a little bit hazy, just given the uncertainty about the timing of the treatment plant delivery and exactly what the cost will look like after that. But we have made an attempt to anticipate changes in operational costs once that new infrastructure is in place. And then very briefly on the Devon Island Water Local Service Area side. Again, we've structured the arrangement here, so we collect the same cost per parcel from the DILSA residents. And then we, other than funding the support services fees that the service attracts, that money is then transferred over to Graham Lake to help fund the operational and capital budget there. So yeah, funding sources. This is just highlighting the combination of user rates and parcel tax, although for 24, Devon Island will be collecting the entire revenue, so the entire $1,803 from user rates. But we plan to have a parcel tax implemented for 2025 and beyond to better reflect how it's being collected in Graham Lake. Capital planning. So the water treatment plant obviously dominates the capital plan for this service. We've got funds allocated in 24 and 25 for design, and we're anticipating that construction will occur in 26 and 27 in advance of that grant deadline in 28. This is the asset replacement schedule, which is the scale is kind of being skewed a little bit by the replacement of water treatment plant assets at the end of kind of the first life cycle. But you can see the supply main and distribution main replacements occurring much sooner. And we'll be working on condition assessments of that infrastructure to pinpoint exactly when those need to be replaced. This slide just
Can I
summarizes.
take a question? at
Sure,
this
yeah.
point? Robert?
Okay, yeah, we're almost there. Yeah, so this slide, just a reminder of the scale of the treatment plant project for such a small service, estimated at about $4 million with 1.5, almost 1.4 million in grant, and the remaining funded from borrowing and reserves. So that extension in the grant is also helpful in allowing us more time to increase the rates and collect reserves. Speaking of reserves, and ending balance last year was about 425,000. And by the time of project completion, yeah, we're hoping to be in a better position to fund a larger fraction of the project. Finally, in summary, yes, very much the same kind of overlap with the board strategic priorities. So I'm happy to stop it there and take questions.
Robert?
Yeah, thanks. So a couple things in regards to Graham Lake. So when Community Works was presented as the first item, you probably heard me talk about how to layer that in. Hornby and Denman accumulate about $100,000 a year, of funds between the two islands. So it's not a lot. If we got the double, that would be interesting because that would be more significant. But I'm trying to think about, well, first in regards to ISIP, I think we talked about trying to see if there would be top ups, but staff had told me that may be difficult, and that was, unless you have new information, that was confirmed to me by Mr. Bradford himself when he came to tour the plant, because all projects in BC are running into inflation. So I've now put across as unlikely, if not impossible, to get more funds from them. There's no obvious other channel that feels for external grants. We're stuck. And so this, I hate to do that with Community Works, but is it me or did we end up pulling all the funds for the fire hall for Community Works? Because I don't see it on the table for the Denman Fire Hall. I don't see it listed. I think we did because we ended up assigning Growing Communities funds to it. That's my recollection from the shuffle around before Christmas. But anyways, I can verify that between now and next meeting. But my question is, obviously, the more money upfront we can find to bring the project cost, not only you save on the project cost, but you also save on interest. And so if we try to layer it in, so if I have two questions, and probably that's for Lucy as well. Like, if in my mind, it's always like 50 grand goes to them and 50 to Hornby per year on average. And I wouldn't want to put all of the 50,000 for Denman per year, but maybe 25 or 30,000 over the 10 years. My question is, can we actually, so if it was 25 or 30,000, does it matter if it's 25 or 30,000 per year, or could I just say like 300 grand allocation right up front? Is there any, I don't think there are, but I just want that confirmed whether there's any constraint in the community works fund agreements.
Chair, there's no constraints in the agreement. So if you want to, in total, apply 300,000 to Graham Lake and you're seeing that as their share across multiple years, that's not a problem. And it would work quite well, because obviously we would want to be using it. Right now it's planned for debt in 2026, and we'd be using that before we drew any of the short-term debt planned.
Okay, so maybe by the next meeting, I'd love it if you layered it and then we see the financial impact and update the table to see what the impact to residents would be.
To do that.
It would be useful. I'm not sure how much is gonna bring that 2,900 down, but even if it brings it to 2,500, that'd be fun. That'd be great.
So your interest is in, if we do apply another 300,000 to
Yeah.
this particular capital project, how much of effect it's gonna have on the annual user rate that's there right now,
That's right.
which.
And the reason why I asked about the Denman Fire Hall and why I think we brought it down to 0, then I'm fine, because it would still leave some room for other Denman project over the course of the 10 years. So it's not like I would shut off the community from community works for 10 years.
The Denman
So
Fire Hall still has 300,000 applied to it,
allocated.
allocated.
And was that in that table and I just missed it, or?
No, it's not there because it already has been allocated. So it's not in the table that you saw in the report. It would, you should see it in you're going to see it in the status report.
In the status report. So, and those are funds to be expended.
Yes.
Okay, so if I made that 300 allocation for water, I am shutting off Denman. So their allocation for the next 10 years would be 300 to Fire Hall and 300 to, and that's about what, yeah. Okay, that's a hard decision. I would still love it if you could bring it back so I can see the impact on user rates, and then we can have a discussion. Second piece I wanted to ask staff is if there is interest. I have the interest. I've talked to some of the people at GLID in the last few months and over Christmas actually, but with the dollars spent, I think there's still interest in the community to have community voices at the table, and not just like on an email basis. I've been pitched the idea of trying to have an advisory committee of interested parties that could focus on future water conservation, the more positive aspect of the project, and the more the potential of the project to enhance the area and the water supply. So I know we're supposed to report back to the community at some point in the next few months. So is that something that staff would be willing to consider, that we add the potential to establish an advisory committee? Not something too onerous, but I think there's interest in water conservation, in infrastructure. There's still, I could pass on some documentation around that, but if there's that interest. And when I heard that, I was like, well, yeah, if you're gonna pay 2,500, 2,900, that might be legitimate to have the community, other than just through our staff, feel like they still are involved with the project.
I think there's always an interest to have better engagement and connectivity to the community for sure. We'd want to know what sort of scope and scale that engagement looks like, and this is a really good example of a service where there's no staff resources committed to this. We're stretched very, very thin when it comes to the support that's already being given, and an advisory committee that's going to take some time and effort to pull together and to be meaningful. So we'd want to understand what the scope and scale of something like that would look like.
So I can send some information, and I would reframe it rather than think of it as the advisory committee necessarily pulling from staff. What I would be interested in is if the advisory committee can enhance the service. through volunteer efforts, as we see in many of services on the island where there's no way we would deliver those services if it was staff alone, like we have Pyra, DIRA, there's a lot of services where volunteer energy is put to good use and the public and the CVRD gains from it. So that would be under that optic. I would propose it, not as something that all of a sudden you've got this panel and staff needs, like they need to prepare a report for them and all. So more the reverse. Could residents feed into our processes and enhance it?
But we actually moved receipt motion on this one, so we're gonna have to close that off. All those in favor of receipt? That carries. Now, recommendation one. Oh, sorry.
I think actually I heard the request certainly for some analysis to layer in some community works funding for to understand what the impact would be on the property owners. I would suggest that the committee not approve these recommendations at this time, and we would then, this would be part of what we come back with on February 26th.
Or potentially we may have some answers tomorrow. So you could just maybe
Or we're coming
shuffle
back
it to
tomorrow.
to tomorrow's agenda and we'll see what we can do.
That's probably better.
Okay.
So just. Does it have to be?
I think staff are keeping a record of the parking lot as we talked about yesterday as well. So I think we'll certainly either report back with this information tomorrow, or we'll be looking for that referral at that time. So let's make a note that before the end of tomorrow's meeting, we're coming back with the any budgets that have to be picked up.
Certainly not gonna forget about this one. Okay, so let's just move on then to Union Bay Water Service Function 308. Over to Chris again.
Great. Thank you through the chair. We'll continue our tour of water services here. So the Union Bay Water Local Service Area was created in mid-2021. So converted from the Union Bay Improvement District to regional service. It supplies water to about just under 700 connections in an area stretching from Buckley Bay at the south up to the Craigdarroch, Kilmarnock neighborhood, which borders on just on the very southern extremity of Royston. It's turned out to be a complex system. We have we inherited a fairly new water treatment plant, which is now well along the way of being integrated into our water treatment operations by Mike and his team. There's significant development potential in the area, and all of this has been addressed and incorporated into a water master plan, which we'll touch on a little bit here, which is helping to guide growth in this service area. Mike has prepared a bit of a summary of 23 accomplishments and 24 work plan. Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So as Chris said, after second full year of operations of this system, we are understanding it a lot more fully with regards to the treatment, the process, trying to optimize that water treatment plant as well as some of the other infrastructure. So we did do a water main replacement and extension on 3rd Street. One of the bigger, more time-consuming ones was a Langley Lake Dam review. We've got into that, and now we have a recommendation list of upgrades and repairs that we need to make on that Langley Lake Dam. Process and controls, we've automated a few things that weren't automated at the water treatment plant. And we're seeing we've been able to optimize chemical usage, and we brought the coagulant chemicals addition down quite a bit, as well as we've done the comprehensive rate review, which has driven the changes to the user rates as well. And then just like our other services, CityWorks, we've implemented CityWorks into our everyday lives down in the Union Bay system as well. The work plan for 2024, there's a looping project that we're proposing up on the Nelson Road, and this would just give, right now, kind of the water main comes down McLeod. It's very singular. If there's a problem on that main, then that's the water to the entire community. So there's a looping project that we'd like to undertake on Nelson Road, and it would enable 2 feeds into that area, just give us some more operational flexibility. The Langley Lake Dam remediation, we've been up, I was just up there the other week with some of the operators and our engineering analysts, and we were looking at some of the stuff that we could get going on right away to just kind of increase the safety of that dam. We've had that review done by a consultant as well as from our from the dam safety officer with the province, and we're just working closely with him to try and work through some of those upgrades. Water sample stations, those are standard in the rest of our systems, and they're more kind of they're newer. They're a better way to take water samples, more likely to get a clean sample without having an error in sampling that could result in a bad water sample result. We're progressing with the phase 2 of the water treatment plant design, taking a look at the needs of the community as it grows, and doing the engineering on the phase 2, as well as we've got sampling stations there twice, so I won't repeat what I just said.
All right, great. Thanks, Mike. And we're just going to skim over these slides we've already presented. And these are also in line with the other services. HR, so on the human resources side, we're showing a fairly significant reduction in, bear with me, in our projected HR kind of hours, I guess, for this service. So we inherited one full-time operator, 3 part-time operators. So I think a total of about 2.7 FTEs, just on the water operations side, a little bit also on finance and administration. But as we've proceeded with integration of the service into our operations, we've definitely noticed that just due to the economies of scale of our operations, that we're definitely trending down in terms of the level of effort being attracted by operators for this service. So I think we'll probably see an even more significant reduction, but more to come next year when we look at another full year of operation for this service. Expenses, fairly flat year over year. We've seen a reduction in engineering fees, although there's likely some carry forwards that'll bring that up a bit. Projects like the development cost charge update, some implementation of the Langley Lake dam assessment, as Mike was just mentioning. With the completion of the water master planning process, there's some action items that are coming out of that. They're also reflected here in the plan. And the rate review is allowing for a significant increase in the projected transfer to reserves in line with the other services, which is really great news. On the revenue side, changes in line with the rate review completed late last year. And summarized here. So again, the table that was used for consultation and reporting out last year for the rate review. And nothing to highlight in the latter years of the plan. So shifting over to capital, we're again very much in line with our other services in terms of the focus on asset management, the incorporation into the computerized maintenance management system. So on the capital plan, we've touched on a couple of these. Just to summarize though, we've got the second phase of water treatment, being the biggest item on this plan. So showing some design work occurring this year with construction happening over the subsequent 2 years. And some of the smaller projects that Mike already mentioned there, the Nelson Road Loop, water sample stations, the Langley Lake Dam remediations, and the Highway 19A disconnects. Just to give you an idea of the long-term kind of asset replacement schedule, what it looks like here for this service. Those big expenses out farther on in the plan there are for replacement of the water treatment facility. And they're kind of dwarfing or kind of making the scale look smaller for the main replacement project or program, which is the kind of the bell curve at the front half. And that peaks here, projected to peak in 2035. So coming up fairly soon. We're hopeful that the condition assessment program that we implement over the next couple of years will allow us to defer some of that. But we do also know that there's a lot of aging and undersized mains in this service area. In terms of reserves, we've got the future expenditure reserve and the capital works reserve for this service. Fairly flat on the fee reserve. And then on the capital works reserve, we see the balance increasing fairly quickly as our rate review increases take effect and our contributions increase. And to the summary page, which is in line with our other services presented this afternoon. So yeah, Mike and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Director Harbour has a question.
Yep, thanks for the presentation. So I guess we'll see the dam report a little bit later this year. It'll come to committee. What I'm hearing as a preview is generally in good shape, but has some maintenance and repairs to be done. I definitely don't see it as a full replacement in the long-term capital plan, so that's good news.
I mean, yeah, if it's not there already, it should be there. It should be there in that long term, but that's 70 years.
That's good.
We do have a 200K line item for work on the dam, so that's showing. I'm not sure why that wasn't showing up on the slide there, but so that's budgeted for this year and next to action some of those pieces, but we will be bringing that to the committee. Yeah,
that's really good. Okay, that's aligned with what I expected would happen because they had done a dam assessment about 10 years ago, I think. So this has been
a
great.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In regards to the Nelson looping, that's great. Because a couple of times we saw community shut down, and I'm like, and I'm glad your staff have found a way to try to mitigate that a little bit in the future. And for the phase 2 for the water treatment plant, which will double the reservoir, I guess. So that's fully costed to Union Bay Estates. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, so
Just to reconfirm
doubling the
that.
treatment plant capacity.
The treatment plant capacity.
I believe the reservoir replacement, not triggered by the twinning of the treatment plant, becomes later.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I misspoke on that.
Yeah.
So the treatment plant doubling.
Yeah.
And so to what extent are they involved in the design and the rest of it? Do we have a formal channel with them and touch bases since they're footing the bill, or is it just they pay the check and we do our own thing?
So the potable water servicing agreement essentially lays out that process. So we've developed we're in the process of finalizing a capital cost estimate for that second phase. And the agreement essentially says we provide 30-day notice to the to UBE when we intend to kind of trigger that clause. At which point, at the end of which UBE is required to provide us the upfront the value of the anticipated cost estimate of the project. So then it's recoverable through a CICC credit or CEC credit for this service.
So
Yeah.
prior to the 30 days, they get a look at it, or it's just at the 30 days you send them the plans and.
I can't remember exactly what it says there, but we would definitely send the cost estimate at with that
30 days.
initial communication. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty tight timeline. And would that happen? Do you anticipate this would happen this year then?
It's quite possible that it could
In the coming year. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for the heads up.
Yeah.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
I'll just add to that the staff are in discussions with Union Bay Estates on a regular basis, and so these are different pieces of that overall discussion. I know Mark Rutten has regular dialogue with Union Bay Estates, and so we know that advanced conversations are really important. So.
Okay, so no more questions. We're going to just see if we can move the recommendation. Any discussion on the recommendation? Any opposed? And that carries. Moving on to the Royston Water Service, function number 312.
All right. Thank you through the chair. So the Royston Water Local Service Area, obviously located just south of Courtney, receives water from the village of Cumberland. At least it will until the Water South Extension project is completed. in roughly 3 years from now, at which point it will be added to the regional system. And likely some consideration given to amalgamation with function 305 at that point. But for now, it's an independent system that services about just under 1,000 homes, ranging in elevation from quite high up, just right at almost at the lowest extremity of Cumberland, with a pump zone up in the Kentwood pump zone. And then all the way down to southern extremity, just above Kilmarnock, Craigdarroch subdivision that I mentioned as the northern extremity of Union Bay. Yeah, Mike's developed some highlights for this year and next, last year and this.
Yep, thanks, Chris. So some of the accomplishments from 2023 were our meter replacement program. We're making good headway on that. And those are much like the meters we're doing in Union Bay and Black Creek, same type, same technology of meters, just to get everything on the same page and upgraded as they're at end of life. The Minto Road water main replacement fire protection project that was completed early in the year. Majority of that work was done in 2022, but completed and commissioned early in the year. That basically brings it was a bigger water main down. It was a very old water main down Minto Road. It was a 4-inch main, so there was no fire protection. So now those homes that are on the water system have acting fire hydrants in front of them with water actually in them or to them. Confined space planning valve. This was a big one, and we're doing this in our other systems as well. But we have more PRVs per kind of capita in Royston, and so a lot of effort was spent on getting our valve certified, hazard assessments done, rescue plans in place, and all this documentation now lives on our computer maintenance management system, and it's attached to the asset as well. So once we do all this work, it's that documentation is all in place and kind of at the on our iPads. So when we go to the sites, it's very much more straightforward to access some of these chambers and do the work. Disinfection pumping system. So that was just some of the hypochlorite pumps that are inside the injection facility. So we don't have a water treatment plant, but we do purchase water from Cumberland and we do disinfect it before it goes into a reservoir and then out to the residents. So we monitor that closely, and those pumps need to be replaced. And just as Chris said, moving forward with the South Extension project with the planning and design. We are taking early this year, and I think it's happening in March, we're doing some upgrades and repairs on the Herondale Reservoir. So this is the reservoir at the south end of Royston. There's some work on some pipe hangers and also the interior floor. So we've got a company engaged, have a contract with them, and they're going to be starting that work in March. Moving on to the next year of our meter replacement program, as well as a upgrade on the water main at Mounts Road. We found through drawings that we have a very small road crossing. So you can imagine a water main. The water main up Mounts is a 4-inch road, a 4-inch water main, but as it crosses Royston Road, it's actually only a 1-inch surface almost crossing, so to feed that road. So we've had, through investigation of some complaints from people about just not having enough water, and we've narrowed it down to this obvious restriction that was not in our drawing. So we're looking to upgrade that this year. Trent Road PRV upgrades, just to be in line with the other ones that we spoke of, just basically making these PRVs more safer to access, as well as replacing some of the infrastructure in there, so they'll last longer and be effective as reducer valve chambers. And then the Water South Extension partnership progression with the City of Courtenay and the Comox First Nations.
Great, thanks, Mike. Skipping these repeated slides. From Human Resources, negligible change, just a 0.02 there, likely just due to a change in allocation, addition of a water operator. Expenses, big item here, biggest is the increase in the bulk water rate to Cumberland. So we just ended a 3-year agreement with them for purchase of their water, and the cost has gone up, not unexpectedly. In fact, it's gone up to 95 cents from 81 per cubic meter, which is very close to what they will be paying once the WSCP goes ahead and they're switch over to regional water. So that is showing up as a pretty big increase to their budget. A slight reduction in professional fees and engineering fees, and similar to the other service areas. Actually, we have a bit of a reduction in transfer to reserves this year, but it increases again in the subsequent few years. On the revenue side, parcel tax and user rates are up in line with the results of the rate review. Highlighted here. Yeah, looking at the transfer to reserves line, after 25, we go up fairly significantly to help save for future years replacements. And speaking of capital replacements, so this 5-year plan dominated by the conversion to regional water supply, currently budgeted in 24. I believe the recommended budget will have that spread out more in line with the project delivery timeline, which is anticipated for 25 and 26. But that is the extent of Royston's contribution to that project. And aside from that big one, we've got the annual capital project summarized below, so that Mike had mentioned on a previous slide. Here's the asset replacement schedule for Royston, highlighting kind of the first peak of main replacement projects occurring, between 2035 and 2040. And then just a highlight slide here, or summary slide for the Water South Extension project. So for that $2 million contribution, funded from a combination of reserves, borrowing, and ICIP funding. So the share Royston, the share that Royston attracted from the $7.5 million that was secured for this project. So not mentioned here is the capital improvement cost charge that each connection will pay for conversion to the regional water service, and that shows up in the financial plan as a parcel tax collected over 10 years for that 10-year kind of spread out repayment of the CICC to the regional service. And that was included in communication to the public last year when we spoke about the implication of the rate increases. So for this service, we've got the FE reserve, capital works reserve, and the capital cost charge reserve. FE's holding pretty steady. Capital works is increasing fairly significantly with the higher reserve contributions, particularly after completion of the Water South Extension project. And that's it for Royston. Happy to take any questions.
Director Harper.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have a lot today on Royston. We looked at it pretty closely in the past year, which led to as part of the rate review. So the only thing about Herondale, this is a minor detail, but I think I talked to Mike about that. But during the election, while you're looking at the reservoir, there was I think we had one of our pipes going through a culvert under the road on Herondale, and the culvert was starting to rot. Did we do anything about that, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was done with the partnership with the ministry. They were replacing their culverts, and yeah, we rerouted it. Very good at being minor, but the culvert has been replaced and it's working as it should.
That's awesome. Thank you. I remember trampling through the bushes with the resident to look at it. So I'm glad it got fixed. No, that's great. Overall, as I think Royston, a lot of residents were unaware in the past year that they were going to transfer from Cumberland and to Comox Valley Water. But I think with all the publicity and engagement we did, I think it's clear that people are starting to understand that. And not everybody's happy. Some people really like the Cumberland water, and and think that it tastes better, but it tastes is like, it's like anything else, right? It's subjective. Anyways, thanks for your work. I have no concerns with the budget presented.
I'm seeing no further questions. On receipt, any opposed? That's carried. And the recommendation? Any discussion on the recommendation? Seeing none, any opposed? That carries as well. And from water to sewer. Now, number 4, sewage treatment core service for the 2024-2028 financial plan. Over to CEO for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I see that Lucy's actually got her light on, perhaps as an update. Something, but
Sorry.
Okay.
yeah,
Yes,
Lucy.
thank you, Chair Graves. If I could, before we move on to sewage, if I can just correct
Certainly, please.
some misinformation that I provided, or actually to bring light to something that we discovered. And it relates to Demon Island Fire Hall. So I just want to correct. We realize we have a misalignment here between our community works funds information that we provided you, and we realize that we have it in the proposed budget incorrectly because you did decommit those community works funds from Demon Island Fire Hall, and it's not reflected in our current proposed budget correctly. So we will proceed to fix that. Right now, that hall at $2.1 million is funded with $850 of growing communities. We have the $300,000 in the gas tax that's still there, $100,000 in reserve, and $850 in long-term debt. So we will adjust that to bring $200,000 from reserves to fund that project and increase the long-term debt from $850 to $950,000. And when you get to that project, if there's some reconsideration you want from using more community work funds or community works funds in this project, then we can discuss that when this individual service comes in. But I just wanted to correct, let you know about that error that we just discovered there. So.
Thanks. So $0 from Community Works Fund, and it's all in Growing Communities Fund. That was kind of my recollection.
Yes.
So that's good. I'll sleep better at night because I was like, oh, if I expend all of the 10 years of Community Works Fund, then and year one, that doesn't leave a lot of room for future elected officials. So that's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And over to CEO again for introductions.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mark Rutten will be providing this quick overview on the sewage treatment core service, and then now we'll move into those individual services here. So, Mark.
Thank you, James, through the CEO and through the chair. I presented the sewer core service presentation yesterday at the board meeting, and all of you were there, so I'll keep this very brief again. As you know, sewer treatment's one of the CVRD's most important services. It provides essential service to residents and protects our beautiful environment. Although small, the sewer services in the rural areas contain 2 distinct services that collect and treat wastewater. And even though they are small, they're subject to complex regulation and costly asset management challenges. In addition, the South Sewer Project continues to pursue a community sewer solution for Union Bay and Royston in partnership with First Nations and Union Bay Estates. Gary will present the electoral area sewer service budgets, as well as the liquid waste management planning service budget, highlighting the challenges, opportunities, initiatives, and of course, the costs. Gary, over to you.
Welcome.
Thank you through the chair to the committee members. So the first one we have up here is the Jackson Drive sewer service. So the Jackson Drive sewer system was built in the early 1980s by a developer to service a 16-lot subdivision that is adjacent to Anderton Road in Electoral Area B. The system was then subsequently handed over to the regional district for operations and management. It is made up of a small collection system connected to an extended aeration treatment plant and discharging to a land-based disposal field. So just a bit of history. In 2011, $150,000 of Community Works funds was allocated towards upgrades to both the treatment and disposal system for this service. However, based on a condition assessment completed in 2014, a complete replacement of the disposal field was deemed at that time to be premature, and only approximately $90,000 of the funding was spent on system upgrades to treatment and controls. So in 2023, we completed a condition assessment of the disposal field again to evaluate the condition of the field and confirm the timing and scope of any required upgrades. Based on this assessment, the dispersal system still appears to be in normal operating condition and does not appear to be near end of life in terms of the pipe, drain rock, and infiltrative surface condition. However, some performance-related concerns were identified through this assessment, and recommendations are included in the work plan for the service, which we will get to. So with regards to trends, challenges, and opportunities, Jackson Drive, as with many of our small services, is experiencing increasing user rate pressures with aging infrastructure. With only 16 participants in this service, even small increases in operational needs or capital works requirements can really have a significant impact on parcel tax rates. The system has significant challenges with inflow and infiltration. In 2015, some repairs to the collection system were completed to try and address this. However, I&I is still prevalent in the system, and this was one of the primary challenges that was identified in the recent dispersal field assessment. This increase in hydraulic loading can really impact both the treatment plant and dispersal field performance. So for priorities and initiatives, several performance-related recommendations identified in the dispersal field assessment have been added to the service work plan in 2024. The intention of this work is really to extend the service life of the field as much as possible. So these include water table monitoring and vegetation management to provide analysis of any water table mounding and confirm available vertical separation, and also to ensure there's no root intrusion into the field laterals. I&I assessment and repairs to the collection system will also be undertaken as required, and treatment plant upgrades to add additional tankage to help mitigate impacts of excessive hydraulic loading. So the Jackson Drive sewer service operates with 0.04 FTE level 3 wastewater treatment operator. Staffing projections for 2025 indicate no change in this allocation. And management for this service is provided by the liquid waste management planning staff through a transfer of funds to function 340. So just a couple key items to note for year-over-year change in service expenses. We see a slight increase of $700 in utility costs in 2024 due to increased hydro costs, and a decrease of $9,000 in contract services due to the dispersal field assessment that was completed in 2023. For revenue, there's no reliance on prior year surplus in 24, with taxation being the primary source of revenue. The service is funded by annual parcel tax with a 2024 parcel tax rate of $1,199 per user, which is approximately a 4% increase over the 2023 rate. And then this is slated to increase by another 4% in 2025. The parcel tax amendment bylaw for this service will be reviewed again in 2025 to ensure service requirements are being met and adequate reserves are being collected for asset replacement. So 5-year operating budget projections show just minor increases year over year to address inflationary cost pressures. And then moving on to the capital plan. So as previously discussed, the work plan for the service includes a number of projects aimed at extending the service life of the dispersal field by reducing risk of water table mounding, high loading rates, and dosing. However, dispersal field upgrades may still be required pending further monitoring over the coming year. So 2024 system upgrades and repairs will be funded through a combination of community works funds and reserves. The remaining $60,000 of previously allocated community works funds, along with $65,000 from reserves, will be used for a total of $125,223. You'll see here the transfer from reserves to capital in 2024 for the system upgrades. And this leaves us with an ending balance of just over $13,000 in 24, which is then projected to be slowly built back up over the 5-year plan. And just in summary, through the lens of board strategic drivers, this is a small service, as I said, where even small increases in operating and capital expenditures can have significant impacts on parcel tax rates. And this really requires long-term planning to reduce these potential impacts on area residents. System upgrades and monitoring are being completed to ensure that system performance is maintained to protect the environment and public health. And with that, I take any questions on this budget.
I think it's fairly self-explanatory. A lot of work for 19 residents, to be sure, but it is what it is. I don't see any questions, so I would entertain the recommendation be moved. Okay, second. Director Harper and Director Hardy. Okay, so any opposed to that? Then that carries and we move right along to King Coho wastewater.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair. So the King Coho wastewater service was established in early 2018 to provide sewage conveyance, treatment, and disposal services to 37 strata units in the King Coho development, which is near the Little River Ferry Terminal. The CBRD took over ownership of the wastewater system in October 2018, with 2019 being the first full year of CBRD operation. So the service has been under CBRD operation now for 5 years. The system includes a rotating biological contactor or RBC treatment system, a sand filter, ultraviolet disinfection, and a 400-meter long outfall extending to a depth of approximately 30 meters. 2023 work plan accomplishments include minor capital repairs and upgrades, including new pumps for the Little River Pump Station, which pumps wastewater from the 2 strata on the south side of the Little River to the treatment plant. And this has really significantly reduced operator callouts and time spent on maintenance for those pumps. A risk assessment of the Little River Force Main crossing was also completed. And this is the force main that carries wastewater from the King Coho pump station across the Little River to the treatment plant. And you can see in the picture on the right, the bridge which currently carries this force main. So requirements to upgrade and operate this system to municipal construction standards and also ensure adequate reserves are being collected for asset replacement has resulted in increasing user rate pressures for this service. Unfortunately, we're playing a bit of catch up for this service with regards to capital reserves, as there were no reserves transferred to the CBRD at the time of system acquisition in 2018. Work plan priorities for this service include reweighting of the marine outfall in 2024. Reweighting is required due to significant corrosion of the wire rope ballast system, which was identified during the last inspection. This work was originally planned for 2023, budgeted under minor capital. However, further evaluation has identified the need for more comprehensive repairs than originally anticipated. Also in 2024, we will be addressing the Little River Force Main crossing. This work was previously planned for 2025. However, the risk assessment that was completed in 2023 identified this as an urgent priority due to the poor condition of the existing log stringer bridge. And then a little further out in 2028, there are a number of asset renewal requirements for the system. So the King Coho Sewer Service operates with 0.11 FTE of a level 3 operator, and staffing position or projections for 2025 indicate no change in staff allocations for this service. And again, as with Jackson Drive, management services are provided by liquid waste planning staff through a transfer of funds to function 340. Sorry. So in terms of year-over-year change in service expenses, we see a decrease of 22,000 in minor capital in 2024, and this really varies based on service needs and the work plan. And with this reduction in minor capital requirements, we also see the ability to increase reserve contributions for 2024. With regards to revenue, taxation is the primary source of revenue for the service, with an increase of 3.5% in 2024. And the 2024 parcel tax rate for the service is $2,158 per user, which, as just mentioned, is a 3.5% increase over the 2023 rate. The parcel tax bylaw for this service, as with Jackson Drive, is reviewed every 5 years or as needed to ensure that service requirements are being met and adequate reserves are being collected for asset replacement. The 5-year operating budget projections show just minor increases year over year to address inflationary cost pressures. The short-term debt for the treatment plant upgrades, which were completed in 2021, will be fully retired in 2026, which allows for higher reserve contributions in the following years. And moving on to capital. So as mentioned, there are significant upcoming asset management needs for this service. For this year, there's the need to install the upgraded ballast system for the outfall and replace the Little River Bridge force main crossing. Then in the near term, we have some small projects like replacement of the sand filter and various controls and valves that are coming up for renewal in the asset management plan. And in the long term, we have full replacement of the RBC treatment system. So looking at these requirements for 2024, the proposed capital plan has currently $90,000 budgeted, $30,000 for the outfall upgrades and $60,000 for the force main crossing. And I will speak to proposed adjustments to these on the next slide. And then in 2028, we have those asset renewal requirements just mentioned, totaling just over $80,000. So design and costing for the 2024 upgrade projects was unfortunately not yet complete at the preliminary budget stage. Staff are now recommending an adjustment to the proposed capital plan due to design and cost updates that were received for these two projects. The proposed adjustments to the 2024 capital plan would include an additional $60,000 to the budget for the force main crossing for a total project cost of $120,000. And this is anticipated to be adequate to fully fund replacement of the pedestrian bridge and force main crossing. And then an additional $63,000 added to the budget for the outfall repair for a total project cost of $93,000. And I'll speak to some proposed options for funding these increases at the end of the presentation. So finally, the long-term capital plan for the service, as I mentioned, has replacement of the RBC treatment plant. And this is projected to be complete in 2033 with a current budgeted total of just over $470,000. So at this time, reserve balances at the end of 2023 are projected to total just over $86,000 for both the capital works and future expenditure reserve for this service. The FE reserve will see modest increases over the 5-year plan with no projected transfers. And for the capital works reserve, we see a transfer of $30,000 in 2024 to assist in funding the outfall repairs, and a larger transfer of approximately $82,000 in 2028 to fund those asset renewal projects identified in the plan. And I also just wanted to draw your attention to the ending balance in 2024. So when we're looking at options to fund the additional $123,000 in required repairs in 2024, we do not have adequate reserves to draw from, with a projected balance of only $66,537 projected at the end of 24. So just in summary, through the lens of board strategic drivers, one really positive thing to highlight here for this service is the significant improvement in effluent quality that has been made due to both operational improvements and capital improvements that have been made to the system since the CBRD has taken it over. So we have 2 options for the committee's consideration today for this budget. The first would be to update the 2024 capital plan to include $123,000 for sewer upgrades, with funding coming from a $3,000 transfer from the King Coho Capital Works Reserve and $120,000 from interim financing. And then the second would see that funding coming from a $45,000 allocation in community works grant funds and $78,000 in interim financing. And with that, we take questions on this budget.
Well, Director Hardy has a question.
Thanks. I'm just wondering, maybe this question might be answered by Lucy in regards to option 2, based upon what was reported earlier with regards to Area B and its community work funds having a debt of $80,000, whether or not how that relates to item number 2 right now. Thanks.
Through the chair. If you so wish to go with option 2 here, the 45,000 would be coming out of the next contract. Yeah, just anticipating that we're getting that contract. Yeah.
It's way back at the beginning. Yeah, there you go. So there's a map here I'm trying to look at. Right at the beginning of the Jackson Drive.
Okay.
Oh, not Jackson Drive, sorry, the King Coho. When they, with the split of the Strathcona and the Comox Valley Regional Districts, there you go. Part of the directive from the ministry was a master water supply strategy, master sewer strategy, and of course, regional growth strategy. And we threw in a sustainability strategy just for good measure. But it seems to me that we are pretty well taking care of the most at-risk areas in the south, especially the more denser areas. But anything, say, north on the foreshore from the airbase is pretty well on private on-site, correct? Except for these 2 small systems. And I'm just wondering, remember former Director Nickel commenting that this may be some possibility in the future of actually being part of the public system. And if we're going to get to the point where you're paying over almost $3,000 a year for a parcel tax to support something like this, I'm just wondering, is there any appetite for like a far horizon, long-term vision of what we are going to do on the most habitat foreshore areas? And I think this is probably one here. Is there an economy of scale there to include it into the master sewer strategy of your? Because I mean, obviously, we're not looking very far down the road. We're just saying, well, we'll just replace this, replace that. When we get to the point where we maybe have to consider, encompassing a larger area, has anybody turned their mind to that?
Mr. Chair, I think you're possibly alluding to the next service on this agenda, which is the liquid waste management planning function 340. And it does look at that more broad consideration of areas that are not currently serviced through any kind of sewer system, which Derry will be presenting on that budget as well here in a few minutes. This one, of course, is King Coho, and it is a single system serving a very specific property through strata. And so this is very narrowly focused, but I think the more broad conversation is very appropriate under the liquid waste management planning consideration and
Well, yeah, up until recently, that the next service has been mostly concerning rainwater management more than septic. But I know we're moving that direction with our request to the province to have mandatory inspections and whatnot. So, but I'm just thinking, I mean, I think in the long term, maybe if we have any long-term strategy sessions coming up at the EAs, we should take a look maybe under this function here, because it's always a mystery to me how much money goes into function 340 that I don't see any tangible results coming out of it. So just a question, Director Weber?
Yeah, thanks. I don't mind speaking about the next item now, because I think I see the link you see, Dr. Grebe, which is, in the sense, this is a tiny service. But if it was connected over time, that might change the capital planning. If this actually it's pretty far to get service, but I think one thing that I've learned this year that surprised me, and I think Dr. Hardy is quite aware of that too, is Director Grant and CEO of Comox had made comments that they may want to look, because most of Area B is actually set in the regional growth strategy as an settlement expansion area. And I think the comment from Dr. Grant is they would like to have a more holistic view of what that expansion might look like. So it'd be interesting to see what the town of Comox has in mind if they are looking in the next 10-year settlement expansion, because if you find that in those 10 years, they want to absorb all the way to King Coho, that might change the capital plan for this particular budget. So I think it might be worth to ask the town of Comox at some point what their thoughts are on settlement, because I've heard it from Dr. Grant at this table, but I've also heard it from the CEO when we were at UBCM. So there must be something cooking.
Well, now that they've reached that magical 15,000 threshold, there's really no point in them holding back their population as they managed to barely do with the last Canada census. One thing you can say though, and this is very sobering when you look at, we're already talking about replacing water systems that were put in when I was in high school. So time goes by pretty quick. It doesn't take long for these things to compound. So if you have a clear long-range vision, whether or not Comox is going to expand or heaven forbid, Courtney and Comox amalgamate, the economies of scale, but, we deal with politics every day. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there. A little off topic, but I am the chair, so I'm taking great liberties. Okay, so we're on receipt. Any discussion on receipt? Okay, anybody opposed to receipt? And now we have the recommendation. Which recommendation do we have?
so the recommendation on the agenda cover pages is actually option 2 from the PowerPoint.
So option 2. Yeah.
And that includes the funding with Community Works if the directors are interested in that.
Does the director agree? Okay. So option 2, Moved and seconded. Any opposition? Then it carries. So now liquid waste management planning function number 340. Move and second on receipt and back over to staff.
Thank you, through the chair. So the liquid waste management planning function was established in 2002 to provide management, staff resources, and funding to support liquid waste management planning processes for the electoral areas. All property owners in the electoral areas pay a tax requisition for this service. The LWMP service provides for coordination, research, and analytical services in relation to both wastewater and rainwater management. And function 340, as I just mentioned, also provides management services for the Jackson Drive, King Coho sewer services, and the Courtney Flats drainage service. So for 2023, we continued to focus on the Sewer Extension South project under this service through the development of the Liquid Waste Management Plan Addendum. This included multiple TAC PAC meetings and steering committee meetings, a comprehensive public engagement program, as illustrated on the graphic on the right, and advancements in project design and planning. We also continued to progress analysis on a mandatory maintenance program for on-site septic systems, with recommendations on next steps brought forward to this committee at the end of 2023. Many projects undertaken under this service are complex, multi-year, multi-jurisdictional projects that require significant public stakeholder and First Nations engagement. The 340 service provides for planning and analysis only, so there's no provision for capital expenditures. Because of this, much of the work completed within this service includes the evaluation of improved wastewater or rainwater management through the creation of new services, or the installation of required infrastructure. Professional fees for many of these planning projects are provided through the electoral area feasibility studies services. However, staff resources are provided through function 340 for all projects. Projects undertaken in this service all support watershed health and sustainable service delivery in the electoral areas. So there are 3 board strategic priorities that will be the focus of this service in 2024. This includes the continued development of the Sewer Extension South project, with submission of the LWMP addendum report anticipated in spring 2024, and the start of detailed design that will start in 24 and carry through to 2025. We hope to wrap up work on the watershed stewardship scoping study in 2024 and present options for this committee's consideration. And we will begin initial public engagement on the septic maintenance program in 24 in support of an order in council request to provide the CBRD with the necessary authority to undertake that work. The LWMP service operates with 2.76 FTE. You will see a slight increase in 2024 of 0.09 FTE, and this adjustment is due to a staff member moving back to a full-time position. Staffing projections into 2025 indicate no change for this service. In terms of year-over-year change in expenses, we see a significant increase in contract services in 2024 to fund detailed design for the Sewer Extension South project. We also see a transfer of $20,000 to Comox First Nation to support engagement on projects undertaken through this service. And additionally, you'll see the $10,000 grant that was allocated to the BC CDC for the Gemstone project has been carried forward to 2024. This project is projected to start in 2024, and we'll work to identify sources of marine fecal contamination through the use of microbial source tracking. With regards to revenues, we see funding for South Sewer design costs coming from both grants and a contribution from a private developer. As well, we see a prior year surplus that is supporting the 2024 work plan and operational needs of the service. So the service is funded through tax requisition for all 3 electoral areas. The requisition is projected to remain stable through 2025, with a slight increase projected in years 26 through 28. As you saw in the last slide, this service is also generally heavily supported by grant funds that are allocated to specific projects and initiatives. With regards to operating budget projections, you'll see again a significant increase in 2025, similar to that in 2024, to fund detailed design for the Sewer Extension South project. The revenues required to complete this work in 25 will follow a similar structure to that in 24. And then the future expenditure reserve for this service is very important, as it can be used to offset the cost of large planning projects like liquid waste management plans, as well as other operational needs that would otherwise require an increase in TAC requisition for the service. Over the 5-year plan, you'll see a transfer from the FE reserve to operating to support the service work plan. So as I said, the service provides for planning and analysis for wastewater and rainwater management initiatives that support watershed health and sustainable service delivery in the electoral areas. Climate crisis is a significant driver for this service, as there are significant implications for water management as a result of climate change. And the projects undertaken in this service are generally complex, multi-year projects that require significant consultation and collaboration with the public, impacted stakeholders, and First Nations. And with that, I'll take any questions on this service.
Thanks very much, Director Arbour.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I'll start by just, making a statement that there is no South Sewer project without the support the last 4 years from Area B and Area C to dysfunction. I think that I realize a lot of the expenditures and dysfunctions have gone towards South Sewer, and that's been supported by both of your areas. So I definitely want to recognize and acknowledge that. We have a couple of shared projects as well, and one is the septic regulations. So I guess it'll come in time, but I look forward to that order of council and process around it. Not on the engineering side, but on the planning side, I think Elena and James have seen a couple of emails from me this week where there's increased interest on Hornby Island around short-term vacation rental business licensing. And so that will take its course. What I didn't mention in that email is associated with that is a request. I know their APC and the trustees have been looking at trying to find a way to mandate septic, some form of septic regulation. So at the meeting, I did say we were working on something. And as I recall the report, so maybe my question today is, are you expecting substantive changes to the report from a couple of years ago in the staff recommendation for septic regulation? Because it had a number of identified areas. For example, Saratoga, Ships Point, some neighborhoods in Hornby and Denman. So are we still, just as a preview, you don't need to tell me everything, but is it generally consistent with the report from a couple of years ago?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. We will be reviewing those identified high priority areas to see if there's any additional areas that may fit into that criteria, but I don't see much change from what was previously identified.
Okay, thanks. That's good enough for today. So yeah, I'm in support of the project. Sorry, one last question. The 833,000 from Union Bay Estates to the service, is that confirmed or anticipated?
Thank you through the chair. That is anticipated at this time.
Anticipated pending successful completion of our negotiations.
That's correct.
Okay, that's an important subnote to that report. Thanks.
Thank you, Director, for the generous acknowledgement. So this is where things like the Saratoga Rainwater Management Plan live, and the Lazo Flats, which is very critical for the airport expansion. And once again, being a electoral area, we lack the tools to actually finish the job on these sort of issues. We do a lot of research and get engineering reports and then put them on a shelf. So I'm just hoping that moving forward, we can maybe find some ways of actually digging in. I guess also this would pertain to our, like a water board or something like that, which may come out as a result of our water management in rural areas. So yeah, it's just to let you know that a lot of the public don't understand this at all. I think we're just spinning our wheels. And in all honesty, we sometimes are. Thank you. So on receipt, nope. Who's one? Sorry, you're going to comment.
If I could,
Oh,
yes.
go right ahead.
Thanks. I just trying to think about how to sort of best describe this in a fairly straightforward way, this service. And I think it is where that research and effort is put in to understand these tremendously complex topics, whether they be sewer servicing or septic regulations or watershed management. You've named a few, and Derry's named a few, and it's important to understand the full impact of taking on these different activities before going in and establishing a service and then collecting taxation to be able to deliver these services. We really need to understand what those implications are. And so that's where a lot of that research and analysis happens, is in this function 340. And then that'll allow the directors to have a much more full picture of what it is that you want to go into. So and these things are complicated, they take time. So yeah, I appreciate there is some length to these different processes, but I think it's important that we spend that time to be able to describe the impacts and implications and not go in with blinders on.
So maybe stick to your knitting. Director.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, I understand, especially for Area C and Area B, like other than septic regulation, and the watershed services, it's early days. But maybe a question to the director and staff. Something I didn't quite see highlighted in this budget is the potential proposed development at Saratoga with a major subdivision. I'd imagine that if this got a little more advanced, there would probably be a need to engage this service to consider the options. Am I correct? Because I mean, they are looking at potentially 500-600 units at that scale. I would assume they would want a public system over time. So is this for Director Grief to be able to speak to residents around there around this service, is that a place where this service could be of use in doing the analysis around that?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think that there's been some work already done through this
There
service
is.
to support the Saratoga area, and so that background information is available. If those developments trigger additional works in the future, yes, this would be a place for that work to be done, and understand the implications.
But right now we've got another chore at hand. You can't fight the war on two fronts here. So, all right. So we didn't do receipt yet, did we? No. Okay. Don't need it. Right to the recommendation. Okay. So with recommendation, get it. Moving second on the recommendation. Any more discussion on that? Okay. Anybody opposed? Carries with flying colors. Yeah, let's just take a little breather here. It's we're getting into it, and how far are we along? Yeah, well, we still got a lot to go. Big lawn to mow here, folks. So we'll take 12, 15 minutes. Thank you. sewer to financial plan on building inspection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So number 5, electoral area course service, financial plan, and James is going to give us a little introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, this is the core service for the electoral areas. I touched on it yesterday at the open session for the board meeting and the range of electoral areas services that this particular topic covers. I'm not going to go into any more detail than what we talked about yesterday, but I'm pleased to turn the microphone over to John Cockford and Amanda Yazinski, who will be presenting on budget 285, the building inspection service. So
Don't get up. Press your little buttons.
yep. Okay, John, over to you.
Here, John. Nice to have you at the table.
Slides. Good afternoon through the CAO to the chair and directors. Building inspection service is provided for in the Local Government Act and in accordance with the BC Building Act. We provide the service for Area A, excluding Denman and Hornby, Area B, and Area C. Our building inspectors play a crucial role in assisting the public with building inquiries, completing plan reviews, issuing permits, site inspections, and ensuring compliance with the BC Building Code and applicable CVRD bylaws. Additionally, they are responsible for responding and investigating all building bylaw compliance files. In 2023, Building Services issued a total of 242 building permits. This included 83 new dwelling units spread across the 3 electoral areas, 17 in Area A, 28 in Area B, and 38 in Area C. Processing time for building permits is under 8 weeks. Furthermore, 279 building permits were successfully closed as complete, reflecting the work of our term position. Our building inspectors conducted 1,739 site inspections throughout the regional district, ensuring the safety and compliance of construction projects. Staff substantially reduced the timeline for archive requests from 6 weeks to 1 week in 2023. This resulted in the completion of 221 archive research requests. In addition, our building inspectors addressed 17 new building bylaw compliance files. Staff managed to close 42 building bylaw compliance files involving approximately 80 site inspections with the support of the bylaw officers. Looking ahead, we're gearing up for significant regulatory changes, including the provincial adoption of the 2024 BC Building Code on March 8th, the introduction of the new proposed building bylaw, and the potential adoption of the zero carbon step code in the CRD. The building service operates with a total of 6.94 FTE. In addition to this figure is a 2024 ask for an additional 0.5 FTE for a new business analyst position. The position will support the automation of building and planning applications using Esri technology. The introduction of new technology is crucial as our in-house software no longer meets our needs. The goal is to optimize our processes, reduce turnaround times, and ultimately enhance the overall efficiency of our building inspection service. This is in line with the board's strategic initiative to examine building inspection and application process. For 2024, an adjustment has been made to our FTEs as a result of CAO approved in-year adjustment for a 1-year term building official position, which is up in fall of this year. Staffing projection into 2025 indicates no changes. The primary source of revenue for this service is from application and permit fees supplemented by tax requisition. Our revenue has changed with the expiration of the Village of Cumberland contract of $55,000. An increase in requisition is required to bridge the gap between increases to operating expenses and the loss of the Cumberland contract, with less reliance on a prior year surplus. On a property assessed at $800,000, the fee will be $39.68 in 2024. To offset the impact and ensure sustainability, we are proposing an increase of building permit fees in the new building bylaw. The increase is necessary to offset and reduce the increase of requisition in future years. And this shift in the cost of service moves us towards a model that reflects individual use. It also aligns with the fee structures of neighboring municipalities such as the City of Courtenay and the RDN. Building Services has 2 hybrid vehicles which are due for replacement in 2027 and 2028. Staff plan their daily inspections strategically to minimize driving time and reduce emissions. And with that, do you have any questions?
Director Hardy has a question. Oh, Dr. Arbor beat him to the punch.
It's a very different situation than last year, so that's good to hear. I had a question. So you highlighted that having lost the Cumberland contract is creating a bit of a gap for us financially, and a little bit of deficit. But I'm still trying to understand what happened there. Like a year ago at budget time, which was around this time in February, everything was good with Cumberland contract, and then 2 months later it gets canceled. And I'm pretty sure that was not at the request of Cumberland. So why is it that we stopped providing that service to them? I think they felt left stranded a little bit from talking to Mayor Brown and others.
Yeah, I would, sorry, this one.
You're on. There you go. One more time.
I would say at this time last year, we were just starting to see the stress of how busy and how many applications were coming in. And that with a combination of the complexity of the applications. We were short-staffed last year. There was staff on leave, and we didn't have the resources to do the work in the regional district effectively without making headway, and we couldn't keep up, and it wasn't sustainable to keep going.
So it was mostly a reactive situation where we were feeling overwhelmed and we cut it loose so we didn't have the burden of their applications. On the long term, I'm just trying to, and I'm not judging. I mean, things happen. So what I'm saying is, in hindsight, then from the long-term perspective, this was a decent contract for us to have. And I know what they had to do is to go and hire a consultant, which maybe we could have done, but
at this time last year, for building officials that were working, we had one.
Yeah.
That was kind of in the office working, and then myself, and the 2 new positions were hired in September.
Yeah.
Which has been able to help relieve a lot of the stress.
Great. Well, on the whole, it's great to see the department fully operating again on all steam, and with the 8-week turnaround. It was an election issue, wasn't it? The building permits and all that. So I'm glad we're moved past that era, and I'm fine with the budget and how we address that small deficit. Then maybe we can have more discussion on that.
Director Hardy?
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick question in regards to, I think it was 1,743 permits put out in 2023. I'm just wondering what the previous year was in regards to permits. It was on one of your slides there, I think.
Yeah. The 1,700 was the site inspections.
Okay.
As far as the permits for 2023, it was 242 building permits. And you're wondering what it was for 2022?
Inspections were completed by the building officials in the CBRD. Okay, so that's site inspections, building permits. Yeah. What were the numbers for 2022? Any ideas? And you can always get back to me later if you don't have them on hand.
I'm pretty confident in saying the site inspections were around 1,900, and I think the building permits issued was around 279.
Okay.
280.
Thanks. And then the other question I had, I know when we attended the UBCM event there last week, there's a conversation revolving around changes in legislation with regards to building inspections and a lot more tasks being passed on to the local government from the provincial government. So just wondering in regards to our planning moving forward, if we need to take that into account, or are we gonna wait until we actually see what gets imposed upon us by BC down the road here?
Are you referring to like the approved plans that are created by the province, or more the?
Actually, I think it might if I'm fully remembering now, I think it would revolve around the Fire Service Act and how some of those actions might get passed on to building inspectors moving forward.
Thanks for that. I can try, and I know maybe between John or Doug DeMarzo can help as well. You're right, the Fire Services Act legislation at the provincial level is it's updated, and there's regulations coming into effect, and a piece of that is the investigation and inspection of premises, public premises. There is a role for local government to play, and but there's also a really strong partnership there with the Office of the Fire Commissioner, where for jurisdictions that maybe don't have the capacity, they can opt to partner with the Office of the Fire Commissioner to undertake those inspections and investigations. So we're in pretty good contact with the province in that regard, and understand that's the case to move forward. So more information to come on that for sure, and we can develop that model with the committee as we understand more about that role with the OFC.
That triggered another question. Director Arbor.
Thanks. On your initial slide, there was the secondary suite program that's coming online. And I've been thinking the last week since it was announced and we're not included in that first round. Is it because I saw a post by our MLA where there was a reference to this is applicable to places that have building permits and building inspection. So did we miss the boat because Hornby and Denman doesn't have building inspection and building permits? Is that the reason?
I'm not fully sure. I know staff has reached out for an answer on why we're left off that list, and I'm hoping it's a mistake, because if you look at Strathcona, the area is listed as Courtney. So I'm not sure.
Sure. I did see that there was a requirement that there be a building permit and building inspection program. And I would highlight that Hornby does that, Denman doesn't. They're like one of the last jurisdictions in the province that don't. So in case that comes up, bring it back to the committee and we can do some advocacy on it. Because it would be sad for whatever reason if we miss out on this program. It's not like we're gonna get first of all, the program is not that, I think they're looking at 3,000 units or something. So that's gonna get gobbled up pretty quick. But even if one resident in Black Creek, that'd be a good news story, right? If we could at least have access to the program. So I'm glad that staff is already in touch and trying to explore how we could get at it.
Is that where you make a suite?
Yes, so
rent it out for 5 years below market value, you get 40,000.
which is really compelling, like.
But you
40,000.
have to have building inspector in the whole district.
Yeah, you have to.
So I don't think we apply.
Yeah, but for some, it will work. It won't work for everybody. But I know some people that they would definitely apply. So, yeah, so thank you for looking into it further.
So, any more questions? I don't see any. We did move receipt, did we, on this one? Or we go right to the recommended action? Let's go right to the recommendation. Somebody move it? And seconded. Any discussion? Any opposed? That carries. And then on to electoral area A, Bain Sound, B and C bylaw enforcement services, and over to the CAO for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And our Senior Manager of Building and Bylaw Compliance, Amanda Yazinski, will be introducing this function 291 and function
Push your button, John.
299. And
There you go.
available for discussion questions to follow. So Amanda.
Afternoon through the CEO to the chair and directors. So this is function 291, which is bylaw enforcement, defined area A through Bain Sound, B and C. So this service regulates noise, fireworks, animal control, and unsightly premises. The 2023 accomplishments, we had a total of 10% of all files for 291. 291 does not include zoning or land use. That's coming up in a separate presentation. So 10% of all files for this service were noise, and 10% unsightly and nuisance complaints. The rural areas, we tend to see more unsightly complaints than we did in this year. In past years, we've received a higher amount, but they have gone down a little bit. And animal control fielded a total of 458 calls in 2023. They're still actively out patrolling parks and also complaint driven for barking dogs, dogs at large, aggressive dogs, things like that. A total of 66 fireworks permits were sold in 2023. And as in previous years, we average around 2 to 3 complaints for fireworks annually. For 2023, staff's worked on improving internal procedures on payment hearings. We've gone completely away from using collection agencies on outstanding fine amounts, whether it be through provincial court order or overdue tickets on both our ticketing systems. We've developed an internal procedure that's actually been duplicated by some surrounding municipalities now as well, with minimal staff time required at provincial court to file and then serve summons on individuals for payment hearings. And we're having almost 100% success rate on receiving payment prior to payment hearing, if not the morning of. And as well as our adjudication system that we adopted successfully a couple of years ago through the province and attorney general's office. And that's keeping us out of provincial court on minor infractions. We've had great success with that. Most of those are done through Zoom. It can be done over the phone, email, or in person, but most have been done through Zoom. We have one dedicated FTE with a percentage allocated to the CSWM service through illegal dumping and other support for enforcement. And that enforcement officer has actually been spending time at both CSWM sites and assisting with educating and enforcement on measures at both of those sites, not just illegal dumping now. We've started working on updating the enforcement policy to address environmental complaints, and further ticketing abilities are now available to us, as well as the adjudication process. We've learned as we've gone with the adjudication, so we've been able to update as we go and as we've learned. We've also identified updates to come in 2024 in the fireworks bylaw around delegation of signing authority. There's very few of us within this building that can sign, and at times it's created a bit of a backlog, as well as some updates to the noise bylaw around how we deal with noisy dogs in our noise bylaw that needs some housekeeping work. It'll be coming before you. Human resources, we have a slight change at the temporary casual there at a 0.08 FTE, and that's for our summer bylaw position that would run from May long to September long. And that position supports by working earlier mornings, doing water patrols, parks enforcement patrols, as well as evenings and weekends, and helps support with other staff on their time off, as well as increased call loads. There is an increase overall to this service for both personnel and support services this year, with a total of 2,134 overall increase to expenses, but primarily through support services and personnel costs is where that's coming from. Revenue, this service is primarily tax-based. We do intake fine amounts, but not enough to offset having it be primarily tax-based. There's minimal increase, very stable for operating in the next 4 to 5 years in the projections here, as well as reserve balances. Got a stable amount increase, slight increase year to year to get us to where we need to be in over the next 5 years. And I can answer any questions on this service.
And questions from directors? Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. I guess the shipbreaking operation keeps on giving for us. Got some correspondence this morning and videos that they might be breaking up the Miller Freeman, so I'm sure you've received that as well. But barring that, I think we are due for our next controversy. Like every year, there's a couple of files that become really contentious, and other than shipbreaking, I'm not aware of one right now. Yeah, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, but yeah, thanks for all the work. The only thing that wasn't mentioned, which I've asked for 3 years, but how's the Ford Lightning?
Through the chair, I knew you were gonna ask me. So we actually have an RFQ out that closes February 15th to expand our search base. We were very local on that. And I believe one of the fire services just acquired a Lightning. And
Our fire services?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, I was not aware. Wow,
So
they beat you to the punch.
That's not fair, but that's what happens.
Yes.
An RFQ out, it closes on the 15th and we've already had some interest, so.
Okay, well, I wish you luck with that. It's been a long time coming. You were first in line, so yeah, I'm hoping that that will happen. Cheers.
Any other comments, questions? For Amanda? I guess not. So seeing none, and we don't need to go to receipt, we can just go right to the recommendation. All in favor? Gotcha. Okay, on to Denman Hornby bylaw enforcement service function number 299. Back over to Amanda.
Thank you through the CEO and chair. So this is our Denman and Hornby Island bylaw enforcement service. This is a fairly new service. You may recall, I believe this was finalized end of 2021. So this service provides bylaw enforcement for noise, unsightly premises, and fireworks. 2023 accomplishments. We did see an increase on noise complaints around short-term rentals. So of those, there was, I believe, 5 of the 11 enforcement files total in 2023 were on noise complaints. Whenever possible, enforcement staff work directly with our CMP, who will issue our noise tickets on the islands when they're there. And we have a very good success rate and we prosecute those for them. So they are inclined to write them for us. And whenever possible, we're actually going after the owner or operator of those properties. The tenants or whoever stayed there and made the noise is usually long gone. So we're going after the owners on that to try to decrease those files. So those are 11 enforcement files that required staff to attend, follow up correspondence, maybe working with our CMP, maybe fire. We support fire in their ticketing as well over there in enforcement files. We do take in a lot of calls and inquiries from both islands. Still seeing hesitancy in folks submitting complaints, but we are receiving calls and educating as they come in. And additionally, staff spent a total of 14 hours patrolling parks on Denman and Hornby in 2023. And I'm sorry, I don't know if those were complaint driven or because they were over there anyway, but a combination of both. I should have separated that out. So staff is still challenged with attending files when an enforcement issue is occurring quite often and do rely on sometimes backup support and witness testimony from our CMP. So it is a challenge, but what's come out of this challenge has actually been a benefit for our entire area for bylaw. It's required a really open and good availability in contacting members that are assigned over there. Quite often the members that are going will let us know ahead of time they're going over for the weekend, or are there any properties they need to keep an eye open, or if we heard of anything, and we do the opposite for them. This also improved our communication with them in our entire areas, including area ABC for function 291 as well. So it's been a challenge, but we've managed to work through it. And what we're seeing and hoping for in the next years to come is more opportunity for further education for folks who visit and live on both islands, on what bylaw services are provided and available and how to communicate and report those infractions for us as they see them. So human resources, there's a very slight change. This is allocated out on that bylaw, the summer position I spoke to in the previous service. So for this service, it's 0.02 of an FTE. And that's to allow for any additional resources and time spent over the summer months as well as we will need it. We do see an increase in calls in all areas over the summer. So expenses for this service, as with all bylaw services, there is an increase for support services and personnel slightly. And it translates to an increase of 10,641 overall. This service is also solely based on tax requisition. This is a new service. We're still building up. So this is a 4-year projection, minimal increases each year, staying as we are. There's nothing coming up where we need to have a sudden increase as we go through. This was a service that was built with no reserves to begin with as a new service. So we're slowly getting up there. You can see over the 5-year where it's getting built up considerably to be in line with other services as well for bylaw. And I can answer any questions on this one as well.
And we have a question, Director Harper.
Just two things, I guess. One is, which the more straightforward one will be, what will the reserves be used for? And the second is, I'd imagine the short-term rentals, those, you listed 5 complaints. I imagine it'd all be on Hornby because Denman does not allow short-term rentals. And this is where I think for Hornby, if it is all Hornby, which probably is, that's where I think that conversation around business licensing and different tools that we could use to disincentivize bad behavior would be good. So yeah, but maybe just on the reserve question, what will it be used for?
So the reserves may be used, for instance, if we had a legal action, the legal fund for this service is $10,000 each year. I think last year it was under 1,000 spent completely total. I think we took in $500 in ticketing revenue from the Highlands. So there's no, it would be legal fees. It may be other projects that or need be bylaws rewritten. We looked at if those were not costed out through normal budget procedures, we could draw on and have funds drawn from the reserves. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We can go right to the recommendation if you like. Moving second on the recommendation. Any opposed? And that carries. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, planning service function 500.
Thanks. And so, Tom True, Manager of Planning, Robin Holm, Manager of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, Andy Maddie Yazinski, Senior Manager of Bylaw Compliance. Building and Bylaw Compliance will be presenting on the Function 500 planning service. So I think who's going to kick it off? Ton, is it over to you to kick off the presentation? Thanks. Ton.
Over to Ton.
Good afternoon through the CEO to the chair and the directors. We're here to present the proposed 5-year financial plan for Planning Service 500, which includes 3 sub-functions: 501 GIS, 502 Bylaw Compliance, and 503 Policy Planning. The purpose of this function is to provide planning and land use management within the electoral areas. This also includes GIS providing mapping support for planning and may also provide GIS service to outside agencies on a fee to service basis. And finally, bylaw enforcement for the purpose of enforcement of land use. This next slide is our 2023 accomplishments. In 2023, development planning processed 114 applications, varying in varying degree in complexity, ranging from development in hazard areas to large-scale developments in Saratoga and Union Bay, while responding to daily questions and emails from the public in a timely manner. I'm just going to pass to Robin and Amanda. They're going to speak of the next couple points.
Thank you, through the chair. So 2023, we had a total of 237 bylaw compliance files opened. 60 of those were zoning, which makes up 25% overall. And those zoning files can be land use related. Sometimes they might be work within a environmental area, but 60 files overall related to zoning through function 502. As well in 2023, I spoke previously on this one, but the adjudication process is fully implemented now, up and running, and we're starting to use these for land use type violations, which previously we had not been under our existing ticketing regime. As well as a resolution through a consent order in June of 2023 of a long-standing compliance file, which was the Santos property, which resulted in another $28,000 of fines collected through contempt application. As well in 2023, through the branch review of DPAs, staff is now able to ticket for DPA violations, which would be working within a stream or maybe steep slope through our zoning bylaw. So that was a lot of work done there. So that was adopted, and staff since November has had that tool in their tool belt for gaining compliance and bringing awareness to the need for the development permits in those areas.
Through the chair, long-range planning has been able to advance a number of climate and strategic planning initiatives and projects in 2023. And a few examples of these are the completion of the electoral areas GHG emissions inventory for the reporting years of 2018 and 2020. This allows for trend analysis and a better understanding of emission sources and how to focus the mitigation and adaptation efforts moving forward. The CVRD were also successful in the grant application for the Dyke Road Park Coastal Mitigation Project for just under 1.2 million. This project will incorporate Green Shores principles to address coastal flooding risk and erosion, as well as habitat restoration. This is a cross-departmental initiative, and long-range planning has been working with the Parks Department to deliver this project. And finally, staff have been working with consultants on the agriculture plan update, with the second phase of engagement wrapping up and moving on to the final phase and the drafting of this plan.
So trends, challenges, and opportunities. At the December EASE meeting, staff presented a summary of the recent provincial legislation, Bill 35, Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act, Bill 44, the Residential Development, Bill 46, Development Financing, and Bill 47, Transit-Oriented Areas. The province introduced the legislation that supports local government in building more home faster while enabling updated and new tools to effectively fund the cost of infrastructure and amenities that support increased housing supply and growth. In the next few months, staff will be reporting back to the directors with analysis and recommendations regarding the provincial housing bill.
Staff continue to focus on responding to the climate crisis through a variety of project work. This includes advancing coastal adaptation and mitigation initiatives such as the Comox Road Coastal Flood Mitigation Project, developing risk-based hazard area planning policies, and updating bylaws to account for sea level rise and other impacts related to climate change. Staff are also focused on implementing the Active Transportation Network Plan. CVRD recently submitted an application for a multi-use path to service Royston Elementary and are waiting to hear back on the status of the grant award. Staff are exploring developing a funding strategy in order to advance projects identified in the ATNP implementation strategy.
Based on trends we're noticing and experiencing in housing, housing needs an increase of RVs used as permanent dwellings in our electoral areas. Staff will be bringing forward a staff report with further information to balance the needs of marginalized residents and through our regulatory frameworks.
So for priorities and initiatives, staff will continue to work on these initiatives and will report back to the directors. Human resource, the planning service operates with a 15.88 FTE. Includes in this figures is a proposal for an additional 0.5 FTE for a business analysis position. This position will support planning and building with 0.5 FTE also allocated to the building services in the implementation and administration of the City Works program. The total budget increased by 4.1%. Their overall personal costs are proposed to increase by $217,000. This is due to the proposed new positions, contractual obligations under the collective agreement, and employment benefits. Increase in the material, supplies, and utility line item is due to anticipated rollout of the City Works software allocated through function 500, 502, and 503. The goal is to reduce application processing time, streamlining process, and enhancing customer service. Through successful grant funding, we were able to maintain a minimal increase in tax requisition. Their overall primary source of revenue for the planning service is tax requisition. Application fees is not a significant component of the service revenue, consisting ranging between 2 to 3% per year. The proposed tax requisition for 2023 is $2.3 million, an increase of around $100,000. This reserve should hold a balance which can be drawn from a mitigation risk, such as legal challenges, which, as we all know, could be costly. This is a summary of how the service incorporates the strategic drivers into project design and service. I won't go through all that. And so we're that the proposed 2024-2028 financial plan for the Fortune 500 plan service be approved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all three. Any questions? Director Harper.
Thanks, Chair. I would be remiss not to speak on a budget of $2 million, but at the same time, I'm pretty happy with what's being presented. So I don't have significant input or other than showing appreciation for staff. I know a lot of work, especially in my area, is happening around big projects. And all I'll share is a conversation I had with someone who works at KFN, and you know, I started talking about this term. I would love to lay the foundations for what I used to call integrated planning in the area between Union Bay Estates and future Southlands and the existing community, and because it's obviously a huge amount of growth coming. But I've been encouraged to change my terms from integrated planning to harmonized planning, because obviously KFN will be the ultimate decider, so that doesn't have to be integrated, but we landed on harmonized. I think there's so many questions that I'm starting to see in the community around how the flow between the new project UB and the existing community and KFN. I think a lot of residents are actually ahead of where things are at. Because I think people think it's actually more defined than it is. But if sewage goes through, I think our next task will be to start thinking about how we can maximize the benefit and also the social benefit, environmental benefit from all these developments. So I'll leave it for this year. I know that staff is working so hard, especially with UBE. So I just want to show appreciation for that. And for all the other programs, yeah, it's great. It looks like we're firing on all cylinders. Thanks.
Well, there you go. Accolades all around. Sounds good. I don't see any more lights, and we can go right to the recommendation. And second. Any opposed? That carries. Pardon me. Denman Island, Hornby Island, and Fort, where are we at? No, X-Way. Hornby garbage disposal function 360. And over introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think we're down to our last few services for presenting today. And then, of course, we're coming back tomorrow for the rest of the electoral area services. Vivian Shaw is here, Senior Manager of CSWM Services, and Vivian will be presenting on the Hornby Island Garbage Disposal Service to begin with, and then Denman Island, and then Royston Garbage Collection Service. So Vivian, over to you on the Hornby service.
Welcome, Vivian.
James, through the chair to the rest of the EASC committee. This is the Hornby Refuse Disposal Service. This is provided under agreement with HERA, and this service here provides for the waste disposal and recycling for Hornby area residents. For some of the key highlights that we wanted to speak to today for 2023, the first one being the expansion of the DPR storage areas for in the recycling building. This is something that we started back, in 2023, and we're slated to finish off in 2024. This is really important, as this will mean that we'll have more room to handle materials that's covered under our EPR programs. Secondly, we have completed the restoration and the painting of the recycling building to deal with some mold issues that arose last year. Again, this is important to make sure that we're keeping that building in good shape and making sure that it meets the health and safety standards to keep the HERA staff safe. And then also lastly, the Ocean Legacy Foundation. Through our partnership with the CSW and with OLF, this collaboration, we've set up that depot in Cumberland at the Comox Valley Waste Management Center. And this means that the debris that has been collected from ocean cleanups in and around the Hornby and Denman area are now being sorted and stored here at the Cumberland facility to be recycled at their facility, to be transported to their facility over in Delta and to be recycled and repurposed into other products. So again, this is a great success story, a great step towards our effort to clean up our coast and making that positive impact on the environment. Some trends and challenges and opportunities. With the exception of tires, we do obviously accept a large host of EPR programs. All those revenues go directly to HERA. So all of these programs are not necessarily they're generating revenue, but they're offsetting due to the high transportation costs required to transport them back over to the mainland. To the main island here. The second challenge that we do see in this service is that we do maintain just a fairly small reserve at 87,000, which we'll go into in later slides. This does leave us a bit vulnerable when it comes to any unexpected expenses. It is, again, important to make sure that we are providing a bit more financial cushion for those unforeseen circumstances. And then the exploration of organics through the solid waste management plan. This is something that we are going to dive into to make sure that that accessibility is provided to and that equity is provided to all residents within the service area. In terms of strategic priorities and initiatives, as you know, we are well on our way in renewing the solid waste management plan. This is a critical step in ensuring that our waste management practices are up to date and alignment with our current regulations and also best practices. So one of the main focuses during this renewal is to ensure alignment with our waste diversion goals. That is currently being reviewed right now. We're also taking this opportunity to address those specific challenges to Hornby Island residents as identified through this renewal process. The Hornby Island Waste Management Center really is a model of excellence for the waste management service. And we're really excited to be able to commit to sharing these best practices from the depot and adopting and exploring to see if there are more efficient waste management strategies through this process. And as part of the renewal program process, we are committed to doing a really fulsome engagement. As part of the step 3 of this renewal, we'll be actively seeking input from a range of stakeholders, including obviously the Hornby community members, to ensure that we have a collaborative approach to ensure that our solid waste management plan meets the needs and priorities of Hornby Island residents. For expenses, this year we're seeing a bit of a drop, which is largely due to a one-time here is carrying over a surplus from 2023 to 2024, which is why there is a small decrease in the operational grant requested from HERA. This is again just a one-time dip, so we're continuing to maintain that $400,000 expense, which will carry over onto the revenue side. As you know, the revenue is predominantly derived from taxation, with the 2024 requisition set at proposed at $400,000, roughly a 6.8% decrease compared to 2023, but for all intents and purposes, it's staying flat for 2024. The tax requisition for 2024 is 0.39 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. And these are the 2025 to 2028 cost operating projections. It's again maintained based on what we've heard from here. It's anticipated to remain flat over the next 5 years. There is a small reserve for future expenditures at 46,000 and a service unit reserve at roughly about 23,000 for a combined total of $87,000. And this is just a snapshot of the FE reserves for the next 5 years. And another detailed view for the service unit reserves. So yeah, in summary, this is from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, we are going through the solid waste management plan renewal process where we'll be going through the full system review. And we are continuing to explore other ways that we can incorporate organics, for example, to ensure sustainable practices, and our continued partnership with HERA is of utmost importance. And as part of the solid waste management plan review, we're also committing to doing a fulsome consultation with our First Nation partners as well. And lastly, to ensure that equitable and reasonable access to waste management service. And in conclusion, we're recommending that this budget be approved and open to any questions.
Thank you, Vivian. We have questions from Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks for the good presentation and the work on Hornby and obviously Hara, who helps a lot with budgeting, administration, all the rest of it. But a curveball today, I won't be, I would like an adjustment to the budget and this is based on quite a few years of discussions. So I believe that the reserve is not that small and actually I have an alternative avenue for the contribution to reserve, which would be quite substantive this year. I think the recommended budget, if you bring back the slide, is was 163 being sent to 164, something like that, being sent to the reserve.
This one here.
The next one, I think. Yeah, so contribution to reserve of 164. So and that's not just me, that's based on many conversation. I think it's time that we address a perennial issue at the depot, which people complain year after year about and is a risk to our workers, which is to start the paving project. I think that we have a very dusty environment through the summer as all our guests come. And I would like to see if we couldn't see the start of paving, especially around the recycling area, maybe starting to work our way back. 5 stars if it's cobblestone, but asphalt can do as well. And yeah, I think that would be my recommendation. And I've talked to people at Hira on the executive. It didn't make it through the Hira channel, so this is the director kind of weighing in on the financial options for those surplus funds. So I would like to request that we do not, that we initiate that project essentially, whether it goes into reserve or stays into working capital for now. I don't know if it makes a difference from a financial perspective, but I think 150,000 could allow us to at least do a phase 1 and address that critical area where everybody get dusted up, including the workers, because it's so dusty in the summer. So I don't know if staff has comments, if we could still pass a budget or whatnot, but
It is something that Jesse has looked into. This is coming from, we've been in direct communication with Hira. Based on the square footage and the cost, that paving that road going up to the landfill, or sorry, the waste management center is going to be upwards of about 900,000. Which, as you can appreciate, is quite cost prohibitive. So we can take a look based on the amount that we have in the reserve for the immediate area by the recycling area, for example, and working with here to look at different dust suppressants, at least for the roadway.
Yeah.
That's something that that's within our means right now. And then we can take a look and provide a fulsome costing of what it would cost to do that entire stretch. Like, it's not obviously outside of our reserve at this time.
Absolutely. I think I look at it as phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 would be just around the recycling depot. Phase 2 would be towards the free store and completing the upland area. And I think you're right. Phase 3 is the massive project that would require some changes to the road, actually, likely, and would be quite expensive. So I'm not talking about that one, but I think it's good to start. Yeah. And especially in an area where everybody gets out of their cars and handle their materials. So yeah, I'd appreciate if with Jesse, you came back maybe to the committee with some kind of recommendation this year around that.
Lucy, did you want to weigh in on that as well? I see your lights on.
Maybe from the perspective, if I could, Chair, of adopting this budget today and how you may want it to look.
Yeah.
So it isn't a property that we own. So someone correct me if I'm wrong, but moving forward with this work is going to be a contract. It's going to be the contract going out to Hira in order to do it. So I understand that you would want further information on exactly what that's going to be. So for sure, we can bring back that information, but maybe you may want to leave the grants to other organizations at the $370,000 mark, for example. And then that leaves room to have the work done, and staff won't proceed until it comes back to this table to give further details on what it is. But the budget would be set up already to be able to move forward. If that's acceptable, it saves on a budget adjustment as we go forward. The dollars would already be there.
Yeah, through the chair, I like that. So say that's about 150,000, something like that, give or take.
At 150,000.
Yeah, and it would sit there as a potential kickstart to a project like that. I like that option that allows us to pass the budget today in that form. And oops, lost the mic for a sec. That's great. And I don't know what 150, like, I don't know. Obviously, we'll need estimates. We'll need conversations with Hira. We'll need all these things. One unique thing is you just brought it up, Lucy or Vivian. Hira, it's a crown land lease, right? The entire thing. So it's not even Hira that owns it. They got it in a long-term lease, I believe. Crown, but we own the buildings. CVRD owns the buildings. So, correct?
CVRD, that is a CVRD owned property, or sorry, building.
The building, yes. I think the land may still be, is it CVRD or Hira? Anyways, that can come back in the report, because my question is who would own the parking lot, the works, right? So there's lots of questions that'll come up later, but I really appreciate from a budget perspective if we can set it up so we can move forward.
Permeable surfaces, of course. Not bitumen. Okay, well, that's a very fulsome discussion around, I did not know that we didn't own the facility, so that's interesting. Any more comments? What's happening? We're just putting it, we're gonna approve it as is, and then Lucy has a suggestion.
I'll suggest that you amend the proposed budget
Okay,
by $150,000 to advance the paving of the phase 1 of your paving project. And then continue with endorsing the plan, including that change. Lisa may switch that around to start with endorsing the proposed budget, including an amendment of $150,000. If you, whatever you think.
Captured.
Lisa, sorry.
we got that.
Okay,
Okay, so
I'm not as good as doing those on the
it's,
fly.
well, it's still in the brain here. So that's the motion. Okay. Director?
Another option, if you want to bring it back tomorrow, so we have the exact language, but otherwise I'm prepared to move it as such.
I think it sounds good to
Or we're
me.
good. Okay, I'll move it with the amendment for the 150,000.
Sounds reasonable.
And I'm sure I'll hear from Hira as well when I go back home.
Ah, the little star shines. Okay. That's it. Then we have the recommendation as remembered. And any opposition to it? Perfect. It passes. All the way across the water to Denman Island now. The garbage collection function number 6, or beg your pardon, 362. And over to staff again. I think I can't see your light, so it must be
Oh,
on.
sorry,
Okay.
It's me again. Thank you. This service here is the Denman Island Garbage Collection Service. This is again provided under agreement with DERA, the Denman Island Resident Association. This service here provides for curbside collection and disposal of waste and the operation of the recycling depot for the residents of Denman Island. Similarly with the previous presentation, the Ocean Legacy bin has now been emptied twice. And the program's working really well with the Denman Island Marine stewards as well as the general public, which is really great to see. The commercial recycling is also operating in full swing. We've diverted roughly about 4 super sacks worth of material in 2023. And I believe Stephanie has actually gone back out there at the end of last week to pick up the 5th sack. We've also ramped up the metal diversion by removing the old bin and getting them registered with ABC Recycling and providing a new 40-yard bin, so which we get revenue for that as well. So another positive. We've also upgraded the metal railing to ensure a safer recycling program on site for metal. I was hoping that we would have a photo here, but it looks really nice. And for operations, for the challenges and opportunities and trends, our fund here is roughly about 68,000. There is some challenges with the repairs and upgrades for this building, which is causing a bit of an issue because for this building here, we do not own the building itself. I believe it's owned by either the school district, I think it is. So it has been highlighted that there is an ability for the owner to maintain the roof. So this issue is requiring attention, and because we don't own the building, we are between crossroads on this issue. We do want to look at exploring alternative solutions or advocate for better facility management to address this challenge here. Similarly with Hornby, we do want to explore the opportunity to collect organics on Denman Island as well. So we'll be working that through the solid waste management plan. I won't go into the same spiel again. It's the same priorities and initiatives through the solid waste management plan. And again, we will be looking to work with Denman Island residents to ensure that their needs and priorities are reflected in the updated plan. In terms of expenses, the operational grant is fairly flat. It's up $2,400, I think, from 2023. So it's remaining relatively stable at $127,787. And which translates into a tax requisition of roughly about the same. It's just a 0.2% increase, amounting to $287. The estimated tax requisition for Denman is 0.1558 per $1,000 of assessed value. And the projections looking out is there's I think this is just really keeping up with CPI, just steadily increases over the next 5 years. This is the reserve balance for the FE and the service unit reserve, totaling 68,000. And the next 2 slides will provide a detailed breakdown of those over the next 5 years. Again, in summary, same as Hornby, we're committed to ensuring that we're doing that full system review through the solid waste management plan, continued partnership with DERA, working with our First Nation partners through the solid waste management plan renewal process, and providing that equitable and reasonable access to waste management service. And the recommendation is to accept this budget as proposed. Thank you. I'm open to questions.
Any questions? We're good. Okay. Thank you very much. So move the recommendation, please. Move and seconded. Any more discussion? Anyone opposed? That carries. So on to Royston. Vivian's going to do another one, and this is for the function number 366. And over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Saving the best for last. This service here is the Royston Garbage Collection Service. It is as it sounds. The purpose of this service is to collect material at the curb for Royston area residents. The main accomplishments here in 2023 is really focused on strategic planning, community engagement, and laying that framework for providing a financially sustainable curbside collection service for the Royston area residents. The proposed changes are, again, really in alignment with our regional goals in providing organics. And we are going to be, we're we've issued the procurement for the joint curbside collection service with the Village of Cumberland to address the scale of economy. That that RFP was issued quite a few weeks ago and is expected to close next Thursday. So we're hoping to be able to, we'll be able to get back to reporting back to this EASC for decision as to how we want to proceed with the future of the service. As we had mentioned, I think last year, there is an industry shift towards automated collection. As you see, this is something that the city of Courtenay and the town of Comox has already transitioned to. This is, again, it is a bit harder to recruit for labor, to maintain labor, to be able to continue on it with a manual collection service. The current RFP that's gone out is still continuing for manual collection service. And this is a joint decision from between us and the Village of Cumberland in order for us to be able to build up our reserves, in order to be able to save up basically for the carts that are likely forthcoming when we do make that transition to automated service. There will be a lot more education efforts, again, learning from based on lessons learned from the city of Courtenay and town of Comox. There are some potential resistance from residents for future change. So we'll be looking to do a really robust communication effort when that does occur. There is, again, the interest to provide organics composting services in alignment with our regional initiative. So this is something that we are going to be working towards. And then for, again, the strategic priorities and initiatives, this is the same understanding around the solid waste management plant renewal process, and Boyson will be very much a stakeholder in that conversation. For resourcing, we are operating, this is the addition of 0.02 FTE. This is for our, sorry, I can't remember her title. Utilities administration, sorry, my apologies. This is to ensure that that this cost is being properly recuperated within the service here. So this is 0.02 FTE increase from the previous budget cycle. And on the expenses side, the tipping fees are going up roughly about $4,700. So this is to reflect the change from the 145 per ton to 155 per ton, based on the projected volumes that we're anticipating for 2024. And the operating contract with Emterra is roughly expected to go up around $9,000 from 2023. For a proposed budget of $217,237, a 3.2% increase compared to 2023. On the revenue side, the user rates have increased for 2024 as per the bylaw update to bylaw 119. This rate increase was effective January 1st, 2024. I just wanted to note for these projections here, we hadn't layered on the anticipated change to automated service without knowing based on when we were working through this process here, not knowing what that term will look like. So there will be likely an increase in 2027 once we have more definitive figures for the automated service. And the next two slides go into the FE and the service unit reserves. I'm sorry. I guess just the FE reserve. And then in summary, this is, again, we're working through the solid waste management planning process. We're working with, in partnership with the Village of Cumberland to provide that, hopefully better scale of economy when it comes to the collection of curbside for Royston residents. We're also, again, working with our First Nation partners through the solid waste management plan renewal process, and ensuring that equitable and reasonable access to waste management service. And we are recommending that the proposed budget for 2024 to 2028 for function 366 be approved as presented.
And we have some questions. Director Hardy.
Any way you can knock down the human resources?
You have to do that out with Lucy.
Director Harper.
Yeah, thanks. It looks good for now in terms of the collaboration with Cumberland. I still will, I don't know what the solid waste management plan is going to come up with, but just like transit, I'll keep talking about the fact that eventually these should be services that are directly publicly operated. I don't know why we keep bringing large corporation. I know there's a little bit of economies of scale, but then when things go sideways, like transit did, you're not even in the seat in the negotiation to resolve a core service. You know, it's just terrible. It's happened with garbage before. It will happen again. But we need full regional buy-in for us to start buying our own garbage trucks and delivering with municipal staff that function. Lots of jurisdictions do it. So, but for now, realizing that the municipalities have just embarked on new contracts, I think it leaves us no option but to collaborate with Cumberland and pursue a contract as well. And I would like to comment that I look forward to our garbage police bylaw. In fact, I think we should name it our garbage military bylaw. I don't know if people have followed up the record the last couple of months, but it was really, oh, nobody reads the record. Yeah, I don't anticipate that Royston residents will have the same allergic reaction to a change in the system. I've already talked to a few of them and people are pretty happy with the improvements and the automation. Cumberland seems to have, I think have they started in Cumberland? No, they haven't. No, they're still doing hand pick. So this would be new trucks that show up just for Cumberland and Royston. Is that right?
That is the goal. I also forgot, sorry, to digress, but I forgot to mention the Recollect app is also live now as well. So we're going to be doing the public outreach with our first utility billing as well.
Okay.
We will get that information out there. So this is, yeah, we're in alignment with all the other all the other municipalities within the service area, and yeah, it's exciting.
Yes, and do you anticipate, did we include some of those couple roads that have been lobbying for 3 years just south of Kilmarnock? The name escapes me right now, just Glover, that whole area, we've had multiple requests, so I don't know if we're finally gonna put them in that new service area.
We have followed up. We've given them kind of the high level understanding of how much the process in order to get them incorporated into the service, and we haven't heard back since that information has been disseminated.
Okay, I'll follow up with those residents, but basically they're not in our RFQ, that those roads that were not included in that RFQ.
No, but with the updated, or sorry, with this current RFP, we have left room in there for the opportunity for a future expansion.
So discussion of expansion. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good for now. Thank you. I'm happy.
And just to be clear, they have a Recycle BC contract in Royston, right? Because they jumped on board early on and the rest of us were sleeping.
Yes, they are on the Recycle BC program.
Yeah, makes a big difference. Okay, so we've heard the news. Second. We moved and seconded. Moving right along at this tremendous pace, I think we're just about done. Any opposed? And that carries. I can hardly wait for tomorrow to start at 8:30 in the morning right here on this TV station. And until that time, I will entertain a termination motion. Move receipt on termination. Okay. I think we better refer termination back to staff for. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. You guys are great. Everybody hanging in as long as possible.